Johnson was Chief Performance Officer for Wyoming Business Council, where he created a system for measuring the financial and qualitative impacts of every economic and community development program for the state of Wyoming. Johnson led several initiatives on behalf of the state, including recruiting, business development, and community development. Johnson has significant experience in new market tax credits, business valuation, workforce development, and entrepreneurship. Johnson also created an economic development building blocks model used by Wyoming Economic Development Association, or WEDA, to explain economic development to constituents, stakeholders, and elected officials. So without further ado, please help me welcome Mr. Johnson.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for that introduction. It's good to be back with you. Hope you're having a good time in the class. I've got my marching orders from Bailey on my time. So I've got 2 clocks here, and I already lost my class. Sure. Okay. Break is that. We're good. Okay. And the break is going to be at 10:15, right, Bailey? Okay. All right. Well, hey, thanks for coming to this class. This is an exciting class for me because I get to talk about management. I've been doing this kind of work for about 25 years, and I've made every mistake you can possibly make in the book. So a lot of the stuff I'll be giving you today is related to stuff that I know you shouldn't do because I've done it and it's failed miserably. So managed people, I think since I was about 26, I used to think managing was about telling people what to do and being smart. And I'm realizing the higher you go up in the food chain or in management, the less you know, you're less close to the action. And so you realize you actually know less the more power that you have. And I use power in quotes because you really don't have as much power as you might think. But show of hands real quick, who manages folks right now? Is there anybody else? Okay, so a good chunk of you. Anybody manage more than like 50? Oh my gosh, yeah, that's a lot. So hopefully this stuff will apply to whether you manage 1 person or 50. Some of it can apply to management of teams. Some of the stuff we're going to talk to you about can actually work with your colleagues. I'm sure you have questions about that today as well. But feel free to stop me at any point, ask me questions. There's a lot of information to get through here in a short amount of time. So let me go ahead and get started. This is Just Do It Right. We're going to talk about management. We're going to talk a little bit about leadership too. Those things get kind of correlated together sometimes. They're not exactly the same thing. And then I realized the first time I did this talk 3 years ago that there was a need, and we were asked to do a little bit on decision making, how to make better decisions as leaders. So having made many mistakes, I think I can give a little bit of insight into that. Before we begin, I think we talked about this last time I spoke to you all. There's this industry out there. You could go to the business section of Barnes & Noble right now, or BAM, or any bookstore, and find an entire section of books coming out every single month about leadership mostly. There's not a lot of books on management. The godfather, the guru of management / leadership training, a guy by the name of Peter Drucker, he had this to say about management versus leadership. I'm not necessarily a fan of this. This is why I put a question mark underneath it. Management is doing things right. Leadership is about getting or doing the right things. It sort of makes leadership sound more esoteric, more religious, maybe smarter or better. And that tends to be these books too. You know, I see these books that come out about, you know, your next 5 steps, or Jesus is CEO, or some version of I learned this from this group and I'm applying it to leadership, the Marines or the Army. It's always about this kind of leadership. It's not typically about management. And when I say leadership, I sort of think we're getting into the realm again of sort of these esoteric things. Leadership tends to be focused on as why and where, you know, doing the right things. We tend to talk about these topics, change management, transformational. There's a mystique about managing an organization or leading an organization and transforming it. Most of the TED Talks that you see that get viral tend to be on leadership development. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. There's books coming out every week. They tend to be big picture of strategy. They tend to give this impression that you can kind of see around corners and figure things out. You know, Jack Welch was this kind of guy, and he was able to do all these things, and this person was able to do all these things. and then they tell the narratives to kind of fit the historical, bias. And they're very, very theoretical, just super, super theoretical. They're very much not. They're often done by management consultants who maybe haven't managed organizations or have ever had to deal with an employee accused of sexual harassment, and you're going to have to investigate that, or someone shows up to work high. They tend to be very theoretical. What we're going to try to do today is give you a little bit of both, but we're going to focus all heavy on the how and what, the execution, the day-to-day stuff, the specificity, the hard work. Managing really is why you get fired or stay. Can you actually execute? Often they don't ask you to see around corners. They just want you to get something done today. And typically the theoretical stuff that you get in TED Talks, they don't survive the real world. Mike Tyson has this famous quote. He doesn't have it. People attribute it to Mike Tyson. He said it. He had this saying, if everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And I think military parlance, it's, every plan, or plans don't survive the enemy or something like this. Basically, we have these plans, we have these theories of where we want to take the organization, and we start to do it and we realize it's not going to be as easy as we thought. And management tends to be where the reality and the rubber meets the road. So this is kind of how I have outlined these two. We'll talk about leadership after we talk about management. We'll sort of redefine leadership where it's not so esoteric, and maybe where you can get your hands around what it actually means to be not just a manager, but a leader. Okay, let's start to get into it. What is your job as a manager? It's really two things. Your board, your boss, your board of directors, your boss's boss, they expect you to get results. There's a lot of stuff going around, and we'll talk about a lot of it today, different theories. But at the end of the day, you're there to get a result. Your company, your boss expects you to get something done. They probably didn't hire you just to sit around and surf the internet. They want you to get something accomplished. So that's number one. Number two, you got to keep your people. You can't get the results if you don't have the people. I've seen many very talented, very technical managers burn through staff because they're dicks, frankly, and they treat people badly, and they just keep burning through staff. So if you can't keep your people, you can't get the results. When management first became a thing in the sort of early 1900s, and actually it all goes all the way back to like the 1880s, the Industrial Revolution happened. So we started getting plants and manufacturing, and then they had to have somebody to manage those folks on the floor. When management became this sort of a thing, what they realized early on is people were burning through people because they were just treating everybody as if they were sort of robots. Do this, get this, and they were sort of browbeating them. And so they began to get the second part, which is how do you actually manage the people? How do you keep the people? They were getting lots of results early on. They had lots of child labor, for example. We now have that as illegal. They were doing all kinds of things. Wall Street still has a lot of this culture to work 80 hours a week, work 90 hours a week, burn through people, because they're so focused on results. But we've noticed and known, the research is very clear, that you can't get results long-term and sustainable unless you focus on keeping your people. So it's kind of a balance act. These are the two things. Fundamentally, you don't need a lot of books to know this. This is what you have to do. You have to get results and keep your folks. Okay, how do you do that? So to get those two things done, you really have to do four things. This is the most important thing of today. So I think I have 70 or 80 slides. There's a lot of stuff you're going to get today. There's a lot of stuff you may want to take a picture of or delve into, but you're going to forget about 80% of it, maybe 85. If there's one thing I want you to remember, it's this, that getting results and keeping your people are a result of understanding your people. I'm going to give you four things. About 50 to 75% of the results in any organization are going to be if you can just master this. They've done research. Managers that do this really well tend to have results that are 2 standard deviations away from the average. So this is the most important thing. If you only take one thing away from this talk today, please take this. We're going to talk about how to do this, of course, but this is the most important part of being a manager, is understanding your people. It probably goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. Not everybody is motivated by the same things. when I was in junior high, which is a long time ago because I'm getting old, I had this coach, and he was in Vietnam, so he was pretty hardcore. And he would make us do this thing called the blood drill, and it is exactly what it sounds like. He would take a basketball and he would roll. There'd be two lines, and he would roll the basketball in the middle, and then he would blow his whistle, and you were required to go and dive for the ball, fight for the ball, and the one that got a basket against the other one, just one-on-one, had to do something like 100 fingertip push-ups, or got scored against 100 fingertip push-ups. This guy was a real tough guy, and he would say nasty stuff to you. I mean, stuff I can't even repeat in this lecture because it's getting recorded apparently. So I don't want to, say what he said, but it was, imagine the worst thing you can imagine a coach saying to your kid. And this guy would say it, and probably worse. He would question your manhood. He would question all sorts of things about you. And anyway, it was not very motivating for me. I found that when he would do this, my results would go poorly. There were others on the team, though, that needed that kind of motivation. Their results went up. They worked harder with that kind of motivation. Whether he was a good manager or not, I'll leave that up to you. But I would just say that the point I'm trying to make is that different folks are motivated for different things. This is why this is so important. If you don't understand the individuals that work for you, you can't get the most out of them. Second thing, so again, this is the most important thing, but we're just going to go through it. Understand your people, number one. Focus on results. Where do I talk that? Getting results is kind of circles back. So getting to know your people, focusing on performance, coaching people, and then delegating down. So again, from the top to bottom, understand your people, focus on results, coach, and delegate. Those are really the four things. We're going to give you a tool for each one of these. So it's not esoteric. So you walk out of here today with a tool that actually allows you to do these four things, which then allows you to get those two things, which again are getting results and taking care of your people, or keeping your people, as they might say. Okay. Most important thing, again, 50 to 75% of this entire talk today, I want you to just at least remember this, if you can. Getting to know your people. How does one do that? Or why? Let's actually talk about the research first. Why does getting your people know, why is getting to know your people really important? Other than the story I just told you about my high school or junior high school basketball coach. The research is pretty clear on this stuff. Teams, the people in your teams feel connected. They feel most engaged when their supervisor cares about them. They know what's expected of them. They can use their individual strengths at work. And they feel connected to the company, its mission. Google spent, this is probably over 10, 15 years ago, Google spent millions of dollars trying to figure out what teams were successful. They thought it was going to be, hey, we'll put this guy from Harvard with this woman from Stanford. We'll put this guy that has a really high IQ with this other person that has high IQ. We'll put this nuclear scientist with this biologist, trying to figure out what makes the best teams. It had nothing to do with any of this thing. So people that were smartest didn't get the best results. People that had gone to the best schools didn't always get the best result. There's hope for me, because I was a result of the public education system. It was really one thing. Was their team member, their supervisor, vulnerable with them? Did they create a sense of psychological safety? Did they do all those things? Did they have engaged employees? Those were the teams that performed the best. Didn't matter where they went to school, how smart they were. Collectively, they performed the best if the person that led that team created a sense of psychological safety and they were vulnerable and did those things up there, which is why you have to get to know your people. I say this to my staff all the time. Luckily, I can't do this for Bailey. She doesn't work directly for me, which is good, because if she did, I would have to know this. You can't get 200%, 100%, 90% of the people that work for you unless you know who they love, why they love, and what do they love. Their kids' name, their spouse's name, their pet's name. I had somebody that worked for me. Her name was Anna Hayes. She was a young woman. I knew her parents' name. She didn't have kids yet, but I knew her parents' name. I also knew her goldfish's name. His name was Anakin Skywalker, by the way, a little goldfish. So if you don't know what makes these folks tick, how do you expect to be in the trenches with them down the road when there's a deadline or something's coming up that creates stress? How do you expect to get the most out of it if you don't know what makes them tick? That's why it's the most important thing, I think, is getting to understand these folks that work for you. As I mentioned numerous times now, if you remember only one thing, it would be this. We teach a specific way to do that. We have one-on-ones, but you don't have to do this. Let me just repeat again. All the tools I'm going to give you today, you do not have to use. But we created a set of tools and have researched and stolen tools from different systems to give you a tool to do this. I had a manager, I think I remember telling you about him the first time I spoke to you several months ago. His name was Tucker Fagan. He was the guy that had the nuclear football with the president, was a really high stress job. He got an interesting way of getting to know his people. He had to use the bathroom, he had a small bladder, so he had to use the bathroom 3 or 4 times a day. So he would take the opportunity, he would use the bathroom first, and then he would go and he would visit with the folks that worked directly for him. There were 5 or 6. So he'd say, hey, how's it going? What's going on? Stop by their office. So that was his technique. He didn't know that he was doing this. He was just doing this during the middle of the day as a way to get to understand what makes his directs tick. We teach a different system. It's doing one-on-ones. Often I get asked, hey, I don't want to do one-on-ones like you say once a week. That's kind of the Goldilocks zone that we think is most important. I'd rather do them monthly. That's too infrequent. Or I want to touch base once a day. That's too much, we found. So we do it once a week for 30 to 45 minutes. This is you as the supervisor meeting with your direct to have a one-on-one. We'll talk about what that structure looks like. The first 10 minutes or 15 minutes is about them, whatever they want to talk about. I'll tell you the story about Jackie, one of the employees I had under my care, in a little bit, but we would spend the first 10 minutes of our time together not talking about work, but talking about movies. It doesn't matter. Whatever they want to talk about is what you talk about. Why? Because they need to know that you have time on the calendar for them each week, that you're going to listen to them. The purpose of the one-on-one is mostly to understand what they need from you. Sometimes they're going to want to talk about something not work related. The second 10 minutes, if you get there, is stuff you might have. Hey, give you a heads up on this, or this is coming up. And then the third 10 minutes or 5 minutes sometimes is to talk about their future. This is where we get into the coaching piece of what we're going to teach you. But you want to focus on them. There are one-on-ones that I do in which the whole 30 to 45 minutes is just that first section. The reason I allow that is because I want to make sure I understand them and know what makes them tick so that I can get the best out of them when the chips are down. So any questions on this first? This is just kind of just a structural thing. Okay. So sometimes I have engineers or engineer brains that work for me, or accounting brains, and they're not people. So they want to know, how do I get into this sort of, do I just sit down? Do we just go? How do I do this? It's pretty easy. We give actual examples. You want to ask an open-ended question. You don't want to start the one-on-one by saying, hey, where's those reports? Or did you have those reports that I asked for last week? It's not about you, it's about them. So it might be, hey, what's going on with you this week? What's going on in your world? What's important to you? How are things? Did you watch Game of Thrones? I've done that before. Breaking Bad, whatever it is that you know they like, you might mention that. You're trying to get them to answer an open-ended question. Because if it's an open-ended question, they will begin to open up to you about what's important to them, not what's important to you, what's important to them. And then you want to shut the hell up and listen. As a boss, you don't want to be like, interrupt. And you want to ask clarifying questions and make empathetic statements. This is not super difficult. There's even a book that I would recommend. I ran into a guy on an airplane once. He wrote this book. I thought he was messing with me. I said, hey, what do you do? And he goes, I get people to like me. I said, well, that's not a job. He goes, well, it kind of is. I worked for the CIA and I was trying to get people to spy on behalf of the United States. So in order to do that, I had to learn how to make friends very quickly. 5 minutes, 5 seconds, 5 years. So we wrote this book on how to do this called The Like Switch. I might have told you this story last time. If not, I'll repeat it. We had this guy who was an intern working for us named Dan. He was having some trouble in the dating scene. He would do all these online dates. He would get on, I don't know, these kids in you guys use all kinds of apps, but I think he was on Tinder or Bumble or something. And he's like, he worked for us as an intern. I said, hey, you should read this book. I didn't know he was going to use it for dating. He left us and then came back a couple years later, and he catches me at a conference and he says, hey, I read your book. It's awesome. I should have read it when you told me about it. I said, oh yeah, how's it going? He goes, I'm using it for dates, and people tell me I'm the best listener ever. So every time I go on a date now, I just do what this book taught me, which is to make empathetic statements. And these women will talk, and then they'll just keep talking and they'll keep talking. And by the end of the date, I've said nothing. I just nodded my head to make empathetic statements. And now they say I'm the best listener ever. So this can change your world, whether it's in the workplace or in your dating life. And it's really simple. It's just making empathetic statements. There's lots of things in this book. I would recommend you get it, about body language, about eyebrow flashes, about what it means when you approach somebody with your hands down versus up. As it turns out, this is a threat. This is not. Because when we used to be in tribes, we would approach each other from hundreds of yards away. If you did this, I didn't know what was in your hand. It might be a rock, might be something I want to kill you with. But if this, you can see my hands, and so I'm less of a threat. So just even doing this in a meeting allows you to be less threatening. So anyway, this book talks about all sorts of tricks and tips. But the one that I really like is making empathetic statements, because it allows you to, or the person that you're working with or managing or in a relationship, it allows them to feel like they're heard. So again, you're in your meeting, you're in your one-on-one. Let's say Bailey and I are in our one-on-one. In fact, Bailey and I had a one-on-one yesterday. Bailey's boss, by the way, is on maternity leave. So I am actually doing one-on-ones with Bailey right now. So yesterday I did a one-on-one with Bailey. Was it yesterday, Bailey, or the day before? Yeah, yesterday, I think. Yeah, because we had Veterans Day off. So yesterday, Bailey's sitting there. We're about to have our one-on-one. And I say, hey, Bailey, what's going on? How are things going? Okay, cool. Then that gives Bailey a chance to have an open-ended statement about what's going on in her world. It might be about work. It might be about politics. Hopefully not. It might be about city council. I don't know, but she's going to talk to me about something. Then she's going to say something. And then you're going to be left, okay, what do I do next? Make an empathetic statement. The structure they teach in the book is basically to sort of repeat back to them what they just said in a different way, but you can use this structure. So that must be observation. So let's say Bailey says, I say, hey, Bailey, how was your weekend? She goes, oh my God, I got stuck in line at the, I don't know where Bailey gets stuck in line. She got stuck in line somewhere. Had to wait 30 minutes. So I would say something like, so that must have been challenging. So that I just make an observation about what the person just said. And then what do? Yeah, I'm going to tell you some more about what just went on. And then you can make another empathetic statement. So that must be whatever. Is you can just keep doing this. Try it as you go throughout your day-to-day. Next time you're having a difficult, let's say a difficult conversation with your spouse or your kids or an airline ticket agent, which is all the rage right now because of the shutdown. Just say, make an observation. Oh God, so you guys must be really busy today, right? And see what happens. See what happens. They're going to feel like you heard them. They're going to talk to you. And then you just keep doing this. It seems a little manipulative at first. It's not. If you know of anybody right now that you can think of that's really good with people, they naturally do this. Does anybody know a guy named Matt Bruner by chance? Anybody heard of him? Yes. If you deal with Matt, I had him read this book. And now he does this so much, I have to say, Matt, could you stop making so many empathetic statements? So next time you listen to Matt, watch what he does with people. He's really good with people. He's naturally good. And then when we gave him this tool, he's leveled up. He does it all the time. He's really, really, really good with people. But let's say you get tired of the structure. You might choose something else. We've given you lots of ways to ask open-ended questions, make empathetic statements. You might say, It sounds like what you did could make an observation. It's hard when, or it's interesting when, whatever they just said, observation. I can see why you would be upset or happy or whatever it is, observation, right? It's just a version of so that looks like you, observation. Then they're going to give you another open-ended statement. My personal favorite, this is always a really good one. For me anyway, someone comes into the office and says, Tom, I'm dropping my investment in Elevate. You guys didn't give me la, 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 la. And I say, gosh, if I was in your shoes, I might feel the same way. Yeah. And then they keep going. So whatever it is you want to use, pick one or two. This one is the easiest. Another one that we use a lot. So let me just make sure I understand what you said. Summarize, observation. It gives them a chance to make an open-ended statement. You're listening. You're getting to understand them. You're making empathetic statements. You're clarifying. They're going to keep talking to you. Eventually, you do this enough, you're going to understand this person and get to know them, whether you'll even like them or not. Sometimes I get this question, Tom, do I have to like the people that I manage? You don't. You don't have to. You can use these techniques. It would be great if you did. It would be great if you cared about them, like from the book I think you guys are reading. Yeah, Radical Candor. It'd be great if you cared, but at least if you can just be curious about them. If you can just be curious about them, you will be able to do this. But every once in a while, I run into somebody like, I hate the people I manage. I hate them. It's like, well, are you sure you want to be a manager then? Because it kind of is the job, right? So we don't encourage them to get out of management. We just get them to be curious. You don't have to love them or like them. You just have to be really curious about them. And I think by curious, you'll eventually get to care about them anyway. And yes, you'll like some directs more than others. It's like on as little my sister and I to say to my mom, which one of us do you like the most? I like you both equally. I'm not sure about that, Mom, but you'll want to say that, of course. I like all the employees equally, but there'll be some that you don't. You can still use this technique. You can still be curious about this. So again, you walk in, how's it going, Bailey? How was your weekend? Hey, did you check out this thing? She makes an open-ended statement. Then you make clarifying and empathetic statements back. Pretty soon, she's telling you her whole life story, and now you get to know this person and what makes them tick. Bailey and I just started kind of doing this recently, so I don't know everything about Bailey, but I plan to get to know everything. Most of the folks I do manage, I know what they like in music, movies, books, their kids, their families, their dogs, their pets, everything. Because that's how they feel connected to you, that you give a crap about them. Okay, second 10 minutes. If you get there, you could spend the whole, as far as I care, you could spend the whole time doing this. The whole 30 or 45 minutes, and I have many times. I'll tell you again a story about the woman that I managed where I just did that. But let's say you do make it out of that into that second phase. This is about what you want to talk about. It can be things like follow-ups, heads up, updates. This is where you maybe can give some feedback. We'll talk about that in a moment. I know that the Radical Candor method is a different form of feedback. We're going to teach you both today. You can also use this for coaching. Oh, another rule too. I probably did this a few times when I was first manager, and I shouldn't have. I don't do it anymore. Don't talk about the one-on-ones you have with one employee with another employee. These are, I won't say confidential, because sometimes things will come up that can't be confidential. Like, hey, did you know that so-and-so sexually harassed so-and-so? Now you've got to investigate. So it can't always be confidential, but you want to treat them with a level of awe and respect, which means don't talk about your one-on-one with one employee to the other in directs. So make sure you don't do that. Be cool, be calm, be casual. That's what you need to model. Then for the third minutes, if you get there, sometimes you just won't. This will be where you can talk about the future. This will be a coaching opportunity. We'll talk about that in a second, but it'll be like things like, hey, where do you see yourself in 5 years? That's an interview question actually, but hey, where do you want to be in the organization a year from now? Hey, what are you working on? Is there anything you want to learn? Is there any things you want to take on? Ask these kind of questions in the third 10 minutes to talk about their future in the organization, their future as a professional, their future and whatever. I have somebody who works for me named Taylor Davis. She's great. We spend the last 10 minutes talking about her desire to become a certified economic developer and how we can support that at Elevate and help her in her professional development, because that's one of her goals. So we use that 10 minutes to talk about their future, not about yours, theirs. Again, this is direct focus. This is the folks you are supervising. It's focused on them. We have handouts that can just do this for you, and we're happy to give you a copy. So I've been doing this a long time, so I just use a sheet of paper and I have it lined out like this, kind of just on my notebook. But some folks need prompts, and so we have that. You can make personal notes, the team member, the date, the update they give you, their 10 minutes, your 10 minutes, what you're going to talk about in the future, and if there's any follow-up items that you might have as a result of this. So not only do we tell you that this is important, we give you an actual tool to use so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Yes.
I have a question. Have you used this in the reverse? So say you have a new leader in your organization. Have you used these tools with that new leader to teach them how to be a leader? So if they were like your manager or your leader in the organization, they're kind of new in this.
Yeah.
You've done it. Have you used these tools in reverse?
Yeah, there was an organization, I think I was in second or third position in the organization. So the CEO, how do I put it? The CEO, I would, yes, and I remember it all. It's all coming flooding back to me now. Oh my God. I remember asking for him to have one-on-ones with me because I knew that it worked. And so he was like, why do you insist on me meeting with you once a week? And I told him, I didn't say, hey, here, we've got a system, you should do this. But he asked about it. And then after a while, because he didn't do this, so he wouldn't meet with any of his directs. He had 6 directs, didn't meet with them ever, except me for one-on-ones. He didn't do any of the other stuff. He just sort of expected the organization to get results through, emails and proclamations from up high. And so I was getting feedback from my directs that they hated him. He would do an org change of the month, an org chart reorg of the year. He was always a systems person. He would always say things to me like, it's spaces, not faces. And I'd say, yeah, systems are great, but people are really messy. Like, you can have the best design system, but the people are going to be messy. They're going to get sick. Their kids are going to need to go to the doctor. They're going to have challenges with their loved ones. People are messy. And so I would always try to encourage him to go back to get to know your people. So after a while, he was getting poor results. People were complaining about him. I would just give him the direct feedback. Hey, here's what's going on in the organization. Here's what people are saying. Here's why we're not doing this. And so he finally said, okay, well, what's the system that you have that you use? So I didn't quite just start him with it, but I let him kind of come to it. It was probably too late for him by then, but I probably should have told him about it earlier. I didn't think to. I was still kind of younger, so I didn't think, oh, I got to manage up with this guy. I thought, well, he's a CEO, so he must know this stuff. No, sometimes people are put in jobs for all kinds of reasons, politics. They're technically proficient, but they're not good with people, but they're really good technically, right? And so the idea is if we promote this person because they're good with the technical side, they're going to naturally understand people. And so I think the mistaken assumption I made was that everybody that gets to be a leader knows how to lead, or everybody gets to be a manager knows how to manage. And they don't. So had I had to do it over again, I probably would just say, hey, do you have a system? Here's the research on what teams do. I'll give them the Google research. I would probably say, hey, do you want to maybe try to think about some of those things and let him kind of come to it, ask him about his experiences, make empathetic, open-ended statements. Struggling with my water right now. I'd probably do it that way. But yeah, that was a challenge. Sometimes managing up is a challenge with I won't say bad bosses, but certainly bosses that don't know the research or don't understand how the performance manifests itself. But yeah, you can. I don't know. I'm old enough now. I probably just say, hey, this isn't working, and this is why. But back then, I didn't think I needed to do that. Did that kind of answer your question? I hope it did.
Yeah, I'm in HR, so I deal with managers all the time.
Yeah.
I have a new manager to the organization, and being able to use these tools to manage up. They did not do one-on-ones, and as soon as I came, I'm like, hey, we're in a one-on-one meeting. So some of those expectations I've had from the roles kind of leads into how do I manage up to get the other leaders in our organization to understand the value.
I'm still shocked to this day how you'll run to managers that don't do one-on-ones. They don't make time for it. Yeah. I think they assume that maybe the staff meeting can get it all done or something, but.
And we're in different locations.
Yeah.
My boss has never been in a location like that. No one-on-one leads to chaos, to me.
Oh yeah, there's lots of research that shows that it does too. Yeah, so your anecdotal evidence is true from a quantitative standpoint too. Yeah, and we'll talk about this. One of the frequently asked questions about this stuff is, can you do it via Zoom? Yes, you can. I mean, it's better in person, but certainly you can do this via Zoom. Some people call it a weekly check-in. Some people call it a one-on-one. Really, you can call it anything you want. It's, I need to have time on my calendar for you as my direct, so show you that I care, that this isn't moving, and that whatever you have to tell me is important to me, and I'm going to act on it. But if you need this form, we can get you this. I'll keep noodling that around. Like, maybe I have a better answer for that by the end of this lecture. Oh, here's a story about Jackie. So she looks really happy right now. And this was her day of retirement, but Jackie was not always so happy. So Jackie was about to be, previous to this picture, Jackie was about to be fired by the organization. This is when I worked for the state of Wyoming, which was mentioned in my bio. She was going to get fired, and they said, well, she's got one more chance. Let's have Tom manage her, and let's see what happens. And this was that guy that didn't do one-on-ones. We weren't doing one-on-ones. I would do one-on-ones. And so they gave Jackie to me, essentially. And they just said, she's mean, she's difficult, she's angry all the time. And, we probably should fire her. She just doesn't get anything done. So, okay, well, I'll try my best. So I knew that my system had to work. Otherwise it wasn't a good system. So I walk in the first day with Jackie, and she knows that I'm managing her. And I said, hey, Jackie, how's it going? She's like, oh, work sucks. This sucks. Something like that. She's had a real attitude. And it's like, okay, so for the first one-on-one, I maybe lasted 10 minutes. And it was just me trying to ask questions. And her just saying, basically, get the hell out of my office. And this sucks. And I don't like this. Okay, well, maybe I will have to fire her. Maybe the system does not work. Maybe I can't make this work. So, but I'll keep trying for a little while. Next week I show up, same thing. Next week I show up. It took about 5 or 6 meetings. And I can't remember, I tried something different. I think I said, hey, Jackie, what did you do this weekend? Did you do anything cool? As my start. And she said, well, I watched a Disney movie. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. Tell me more about this Disney movie. So she did. And then I found out, 5 or 6 more one-on-ones later, that she liked Disney cruises, that she liked cat videos. So we watched a couple cat videos. Now, this is not a very productive way to spend your time, right? Your bosses certainly would not want you to be watching cat videos with your directs. But it's a system. I knew I needed to get results from her. I needed to know her, what made her tick. So if it's cat videos that we're going to watch, it's going to be cat videos. Eventually, I don't know, this is probably 12 meetings in. She eventually says, hey, can I tell you about something about work? This process is flawed, and we should improve it. Like, wait a second, we've been talking about Disney cruises and cat videos for so long. What's going on here? What was going on is she now trusted me. She knew that I cared about what makes her tick. I was willing to ask empathetic statements, understand her as a person, and eventually it led to her opening up about work. Eventually, I found out that one of the reasons she was upset is the guys that were near her in her cubicle would talk about their weekends, talk about things that maybe were inappropriate in the weekends. And so she would have to overhear this. So I spoke to the guys, hey guys, be careful about what you say. You know, it's not right to say what you're saying, and, you know, clean it up. But then we got our headphones, like cancellation headphones, not music cancellation, but just cancellation headphones, like you kind of would wear at the rifle range. So she would put them on. And so she started producing better, all because I learned about her doing one-on-ones. This is the only reason she ended up staying with us. She was one of the best employees we had ever had. She worked in a lot of data and analytics. And it was all because I just started out by saying, how's it going? What's going on with you? What's up in your world? How was your weekend? Doing these one-on-ones over and over and over and over again. So keep doing them, keep working with them. They eventually work. I have other stories, but Jackie's the one I think is the most. She left, still keep in touch with her all the time. She's great, but it was because of one-on-ones. That's it. We're going to teach you a lot of stuff today, a lot of stuff, but this happened. She improved. She did well. The organization got results simply by me sitting down with her once a week and just asking open-ended questions. Okay, that's the first thing. If you only remember one thing, so that now some of you just want to start sleeping, go ahead. Start texting, go ahead, that's fine. I'm not going to notice. I won't call you out. Just remember that first part. We've got a form. So there's no excuse. You can even have a form that'll help you do this clumsily your first few times if needed, but it'll help you. Okay, focus on results. How do we do that? This is, and people don't like this is the feedback model. You're being taught a specific one in Radical Candor. I'm going to go over that one, but this is the one that I think we got this from a group called Manager Tools. It was a really great feedback tool. A lot of folks understand it now, and there's some good research behind it. Most managers are scared to talk about results and give feedback because it's gone poorly in the past. Why? Because they haven't done it right. It's gone off negatively. Someone's got really defensive. You might have walked in and said, hey, I need to tell you your reports are bad. Fix them. Didn't go so well for you. So they're scared to try this feedback model because it hasn't gone well. And in South Dakota, not a shocker, it's Midwest nice. So even managers here are afraid to actually go get feedback because it might be uncomfortable here in South Dakota. Most of your feedback should be positive. 5-to-1 ratio. The model we're going to teach you works for positive feedback, which you should be giving most of, and negative feedback. So when the person hears the negative feedback, it's not a shock to the system because they've been getting the same model with positive feedback. This isn't sandwich complimenting, by the way. There's research behind that is very bad. You don't do it. This sort of goes like this. Bailey, we really value your work here. You're such a great person. These reports really suck, but we think you're a really good person. That's sandwich complimenting. It does not work. They see through it. They see it from a mile away. They know what you're trying to do. But if you're always giving positive reinforcement and feedback, and then there's a negative one dropped in, it's not going to seem like a big deal. What you're trying to do with feedback is not punish them for the past. A lot of managers are like, they're mad. They're direct, did something behavior-wise or results-wise, and they want to get them. That's not what feedback is about. It's about changing future behavior. So that just happened. There's nothing you can do about it. What you're about to do with feedback is you're trying to change their future behavior. But that's in the past. You cannot let that piss you off. You can't go into the feedback model with being really upset. If you can't laugh while you're giving feedback, you might not want to give the feedback actually. Way more positive than negative. And assume that negative behavior is an aberration. It's not a character flaw. Some beginning managers, even older managers do that. They make an observation or they want to give feedback and they think it's a character flaw in their direct versus an aberration. Treat it like it's an aberration. You're giving one-time feedback until it's not an aberration. I'm sure I'll get this question today, but I'll answer it now. How many I always get this. When can I fire somebody? It's like, that's not the point. The point is to try to their future behavior, not to fire them. You're not trying to give them feedback so that you can fire them. You're trying to give them feedback to change their future behavior. Now, there's an answer to that question. It's probably 6 or 7 times, and they haven't changed after you've given them feedback. That's a time to have a conversation with them, and not even fire them. We put them on a performance improvement plan or something. But anyway, the point is not to fire them. It's to change their future behavior. Yeah. So let's say you showed up late for the meeting today. And I said, I'll give you the feedback model. I'd say, hey, can I make an observation, or can I give you some feedback? You say yes. You ask for permission. I say, hey, when you show up late for work today or the meeting today, it sends the wrong signal to your colleagues, and they view it as maybe I can show up late for work today. I was wondering if we can maybe fix that in the future. Right? That's a kind of a feedback model we'll teach. So what I would want to say it's an aberration is I wouldn't want to assume that you show up late to meetings and work as a result of you doing that one time. In other words, assuming it's a character flaw in you that you always show up late. So make sure that you're in your headspace when you're giving this feedback. Make sure that you're understanding I'm treating this as if it's a one-off. It's an aberration. It's not a character flaw in you, because that's what'll get you into a really bad mindset if you think, hey, this guy always is late, even though it might not even be true. But you're just assuming you're globalizing that. So just make sure it's a one-off until it becomes not a one-off. We'll go through this in a sec. Okay. Feedback is timely. You want to do it as soon as possible if you can. I'm sure all of you have had this situation where you do, let's say, your annual review, and your boss says, oh, I'm going to hit you with something that I didn't tell you about 5 months ago when I should have told you, but I'm going to tell you now. It's like, wait, you just blindsided me. That's not right. How can you now judge me on something that you're bringing up later that you should have told me about 5 months ago? So bad managers wait, bad managers blindside. Don't do that. Good managers ask for permission. One of the things we're trying to do with our directs is give them a sense of agency, because agency drives meaning at work. If someone feels like they're in control of their time and their destiny, they feel connected to work. So you want to ask them permission before you even give this feedback. Don't walk and say, Mark, your reports suck. You'd want to say, hey, Mark, I was wondering if I could talk about your reports. They say yes. We'll teach you the structure in a moment. So don't just, you want to ask for permission. Bad managers take their direct time. Good managers ask for their time. You want to be specific. This especially goes in with the positive feedback. The directs that work for you are smart. They know when you say, good work, guys, that you might have just maybe, that's what I'm supposed to say, because it says in the book that I'm supposed to give a positive compliment, right? So good work. That's not specific enough. It'd be better you to say, hey, Bailey, when you got that magazine to press ahead of the deadline, it really helped us show the board that we're on top of it. Good work. Keep that up. By the way, I use the same structure there that I just used for a negative piece of feedback, and we'll teach that to you. But notice what I did. I was specific about what she did. I didn't say, Bailey, good job on the magazine. They've also they've researched this in parenting too. So I guess I'll give you a little parenting advice, even though I've been divorced and my kids don't always love me. They've done some research. So when you praise your kid for their effort and you're specific, it's better than just saying general stuff like good job today out in the field. It's better to say good way to work hard on that specific thing. Generalizing bad, specificity good. When I was a screenwriter, that's not on my bio. I was a screenwriter for a while. The first rule of film school, you get into class. The first rule they teach you in screenwriting is always put a dog in your film if you want people to like it. The second rule was show, don't tell. Be specific. Okay. The structure of feedback is pretty easy. You just ask for permission. Some managers will say, hey, can I give you some feedback? We found that doesn't always land real well with your directs. because the word feedback, like, oh my God, can you give me some feedback? I don't want that. That's bad. So we found that asking if you can make an observation or can we talk about something that you're going to talk about is a better way of asking for permission. But you do you. If you want to say, hey, can I make some feedback? Can I give you some feedback? You can certainly do that. I think we actually give you some. Yes. Let's actually just, I'll go back in a second. If you're going to ask for permission, you can say, hey, can I make an observation? Can I share something with you? Can I give you some feedback? I don't think it's great, but if you want to use it, go ahead. Can we talk about what just happened this morning, yesterday, this afternoon? Can we talk about your performance? Probably not a good one either. Can we have a word? Oh, sure, I'll take a word. Like, what's it about, right? So you're never going to ask a direct question that you don't intend to honor. So if they say no, hey, can I make an observation? No. This will happen occasionally. Say, okay, cool. Another time then. Why? Why does that matter? Because you're giving them the agency. Your goal is to give agency to the people that work for you. That's how they feel connected. That's how they get results. This is one of the subtle ways you give agency to somebody. Even if you're giving them feedback, you're giving them agency because you're asking for their permission. Okay, that's the first part of the structure. You're going to state what the behavior was. So, hey, can I make an observation about this afternoon? Sure. You want to put it in the present tense. So this is a negative piece of feedback, right? But I'll do this for the positive one as well. Hey, can I make an observation? Bailey says yes. Hey, Bailey, when you show up 10 minutes late to staff meetings, state what the behavior was, ask for permission, state the behavior. Now you state the consequences of the action. When you show up late to staff meetings, 10 minutes late, it makes it appear as though maybe you don't value your colleagues' time. Notice I use a little bit of distancing language too. It might appear, it may appear. That's just kind of my style. And I do a lot of distance. I try to distance a little bit so that they don't feel so insulted or hurt by it. Then you get the commitment to either change or keep the same behavior. So going through this, hey, Bailey, can I make an observation? Can we talk about the staff meeting? She says yes. If she says no, don't do it. Wait for another time. She's going to say yes. Okay. When you show up late to staff meetings, it makes it appear that you don't value your colleagues' time. Do you think we could do that differently in the future? You gave them agency by asking permission. Now you're giving them agency as to whether or not they want to solve this problem. They're going to say yes. They know you're their boss. If the person says no to this, that probably wasn't a good hire, honestly, but we can talk about that in a little bit. It's very rare that that will happen. Super rare. It's very rare that someone will say no. But let's say this does happen. And you're wondering, why did they just say no to make an observation? Who knows? Maybe their mom just died. Maybe their dog just died. Maybe their kid had to go to hospital. You have no clue why they said no. Respect it though. Now I get this question a lot. What if they keep saying no and they keep saying no and they keep saying no? They're on to me. Eventually you want to just make the observation, but I've never seen that happen, honestly. I can't recall. I've been managing for like 20 years and been doing this for longer than that. Enough that I have to dye my hair. I've never seen that happen, but it could maybe. Maybe you have an example. Maybe we can talk about that example. Okay, so that's the structure. Yes, someone has their hand up.
What's the pacing and the timing as far as like you get to part 3, you sort of let them jump to the solution, give them a chance to.
Yeah. You. It depends on the person. Yeah, I mean, I wish there was a cookie cutter way. For me, it'll be like, this is stylistically how I am. I try to tend. This is why I wish Bailey would let me do the public speaking section of this course, because I tend to use my voice in kind of as a tool. I raise it, I let it fall, I go short, I go long, I go quick, I go longer with my vowels sometimes. I tend to say it in a pace I try to make it as non-threatening as possible, as much distance. Like I say, hey, Bailey, hey, can we talk about this afternoon? Notice what I did. I made my octave higher. I'm trying to be less threatening, so my voice isn't so low. Hey, Bailey, can we talk about this afternoon? Because I want her to say yes. She says yes. Okay, so that's part of the pace, right? You're just going to wait for the answer. Then you're going to pause and you say, hey, when you sexually harass Adam in staff meetings, that's not going to, I'm just making something up, right? Hey, sorry, let me try to be more serious. Hey, Bailey, can we talk about the staff meeting this afternoon? She says, yeah, of course. I say, hey, when you interrupt me when I'm trying to make a point during my update on the metrics, it felt like maybe you don't respect what I'm saying. I'm wondering if we can fix that. Do you see what I did? I really lengthened it. I took the tone of my voice. I upped it. I lengthened the pace of it. I think people that are naturally good with people do this automatically. I think if you're learning it, you're just going to have to kind of stumble through it. And you certainly, what I would not recommend is, I'm going to read this feedback model to you right now, right? But you'll come up with a style of your own that fits your personality too. Yeah.
Sorry. Tom, you've had to run into the instance when someone gets defensive.
Yeah.
How do you navigate and articulate from there?
Yeah, we'll let me see if I want to answer it now. Yeah, I guess I can answer it now. They might not agree with you. And so I've had that. Well, I disagree. I said, okay, that's okay. I'm just a person just like you. And just because I say something doesn't mean that it's actually true. It's not the Bible. It's not the Ten Commandments. So let's think about this and talk about it in the future. Maybe we'll come to a common ground. Defensiveness typically is this. What's behind it is they know it's true, but they just can't accept that it's true right now. So they get defensive. And so what you do is you say, okay, listen, that's interesting. Let me noodle that. We'll talk about this. Let's talk about this next time. They've received your feedback. Trust me. They will generally do what you want, what you're hoping they'll do. And you can also maybe explore that and say, okay, well, what do you think? How do you think we could handle it to make it better? So you're still asking for the solution. You've made the observation. But here's another thing I would say. If you're making a lot of positive feedback, because this is not just, a lot of folks associate this with negative feedback. It's also positive. If you're giving them those 3 to 5, when you give them that negative piece of feedback, they're not going to take it and be defensive because you've given them 4 or 5 positive things of feedback. So for example, that thing I said with Bailey earlier, hey, when you interrupt me, Bailey doesn't do that to me, by the way, just I made that up. Before that, I would have said, hey, Bailey, hey, can I make some observation about the magazine? When you write those stories with that intro that has a storytelling element, it's amazing. I get great feedback from the board members. Good job, keep it up, right? I'm doing that throughout the week. Most of the stuff I'm doing is that. Do you see I use the same structure? I use the same exact structure with positive feedback so that Bailey knows, and I'm doing one-on-ones with her. So she knows I care about her as a person. She knows I want the best for her as a person. This is kind of getting into the radical candor thing. They know I care. They know I want what's best for them. I'm giving them those positive feedback. They're going to be much less defensive if you're doing that. In a vacuum, though, someone could be defensive if you just walked up and gave feedback right off the street. So there was one here. I've got lots of questions. Okay, let's go there.
I just wanted to kind of add on to that. We use a feedback format very similar to this, and I think that consequences in your part 3 has a very negative connotation. If you swap that out with impact,
Right.
It works very well in the opposite way. So
Right.
you can it's still very specific, though. State what they did, name
Right.
their impact, and then you can still make that commitment to the positive
Right.
behavior. So you're not just thinking about this and like, I only give negative feedback.
Right. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I see.
Do you ever find that some people may not respond well to this in the sense that they might feel like you're being almost condescending to them? In thinking of applying this to, like, for example, my staff, oftentimes they're like, just be upfront with me, just be blunt. I just want to hear what you need, as opposed to like baby handling them, I guess, throughout this process. So I'm just curious if you ever have.
Yeah, I do have staff members that very much like that. And if you're doing the one-on-ones with them, right, you're doing the first thing. So you're doing the one-on-ones, you'll know which ones just want it, right? Just tell it to me. Don't give me any. They're really smart. I have staff members who are really smart, and I teach them this stuff too. That's part of my problem is when you teach it to them and you're teaching managers to do it, then when you do it to them, they're like, I know what you're doing to me, right? So they become really smart, but they're very smart. If you've had one-on-ones with them and you know they really mean it, because some employees say, just give it to me straight. And then when you give it to them straight, they get, in a fetal position. If you truly believe that's how they are, then yeah, you can just say, hey, we need to talk about what you did there. Because that's how they want it. So always adapt and change according to that first thing, which is I want to know who this person is. You might have someone who's autistic that works for you, right? This stuff, this touchy-feely stuff is not going to be a way to meet them. The person that works for me is an executive assistant. Her name is Ashley. She's a wonderful human being, great, decent soul. But she is someone that if I try to flower it around, she'll want me just to tell her the truth. So I find, oh my God, I just said something that I would anticipate for me would be really blunt and hurtful. She just takes it and it just doesn't take it personally. She just does it. So I've had to learn over time with my one-on-ones with her that she really does want me just to say, Ashley, you screwed up at the board meeting because you didn't get those notes right. And we need to fix that, right? You know this. So I know that's what she wants. So always default to the first rule. There's a couple hands over here.
Do you recommend doing it in like a closed door setting or open, or even like when you're first starting one-on-ones, going to a different place like a coffee shop or something?
Great question. I get these questions a lot. So they meaning the research says that if you can meet them on their turf, it's a little less threatening, but it doesn't really matter where it is, but you do want it to be private because here's why. I once gave feedback to a guy who was playing, this is my mom would say this, he was playing footsie with the girls in accounting. That's how my mom would say it. My grandma maybe, but a more realistic way would say is that he was always flirting with the girls in accounting, right? Even more realistic way would be something else, but you get where I'm going with this. So it pissed me off. Again, I was new to management. I didn't know any of this stuff. And so I just walk in and I give him the feedback right on the floor in front of these women. And he was sort of emasculated by it. He quit 2 weeks later because I made him look like a fool in front of these girls. So private is pretty much what I would do. There's this old rule that people will say, always praise in public and criticize in private. That's another way of maybe saying that. But I think because of some of these things and the sensitivity in which you're going to deliver them, you tend to want to be the private, especially in the one-on-ones, because they might tell you something in that one-on-one that you don't want to do in a cubicle. You want to do it in a private setting. So I've had this happen. Hey, how's it going this week? Hey, I got to tell you something really important. I saw so-and-so make an unwanted sexual advance to so-and-so at the water cooler or whatever the hell it is. And it was inappropriate and you need to know about it. That's something that was going to come up in a one-on-one possibly that you don't want anybody else to hear because you know you're going to have to go to HR and you're going to be required to address it because that's how it works in today's workplace. Just how you
going off like defensive behavior. Like how do you handle an employee that's overly emotional on the other end, where like feedback, whether positive or negative, comes like in a way they start crying or like give kind of that kind of reaction?
Yeah, I've had criers quite a lot. Again, so these I would just preface this with if you get to know who they are first and you know how they are, then you'll alter the behavior. But for me, if I'm going to give a kind of a general strategy for those kind of things, this will get into the radical candor side that you guys have been reading, which we're going to go through that model too. That's what I'll say. If Bailey started crying in front of me and after some feedback, hey Bailey, hey Bailey, can I make an observation about the magazine? Because Bailey does our magazine. She says, yeah, sure. Hey, your stories they're not carrying a lot of punch anymore. They're 300 words. We wanted these to be 500 words and they're just not really carrying the weight anymore. What do you think we can do to help that? Right. And she starts crying. She wouldn't, but let's say she did. I'd probably lead with, again, so if you guys read the book Radical Candor, I think you guys are reading it now, that top quadrant right there is like care, and the right quadrant is direct. That's where I think you really have to say, and again, it takes practice, but I think you have to say, hey, listen, I care about you. This feedback is coming from a place where I want you to be successful here. If I was in your shoes, I would want to hear this. I would want to know this. I care about what happens to you. I want you to be successful. This is why you need to know this. This is not about me coming down on you. I understand it's an emotional conversation and it's okay to cry, but I just want you to know this is coming from a place where I care what happens to you, something like that. So could you tell I used to be a screenwriter? Okay. When you're a screenwriter, by the way, they make you act, and I sucked at it. I was pretty good at writing, but they make you go on auditions, and I hated every second of it. But it actually ended up helping me in places where you have to, be in front of a city council and pretend like you care about them. I do. I care about the city council. Yeah.
How do you, like, when you're just getting started, like new employee, or you're just moving into management, you're getting to know these people, how do you kind of, let's say this, ramp up that kind of personal, so they don't see through kind of the BS and feel you lose the genuineness of like, hey, I really care about you, but this is,
right.
After you know them for 5 years, you know their kids' names, their kids' names, whatever, then it's easy to kind of genuinely do that without.
But if you're new and you're just starting,
or if it's an employee you don't care for as much and you're really just trying to get through it, you're worried that they're going to see through it because you truthfully have a hard time, relating to that personal side.
Yeah, I'd say don't feel like you've got to get here fast. If you have to take 6 months, and sorry, I'm not going to go back because it's taking too much of your time, but if you can just focus on the one-on-ones for the first 6 months, do that versus the feedback. Now, if it's something super important, obviously you need to give the feedback, but if you can hold off on that to where you feel like, hey, we've reached a point where we can talk about things, because I've met with this person for a long time. And if you can stay curious, because I've had directs that I don't necessarily care for. I always just remind myself, hey, they're a human being just like you. They're interesting. There's got to be something about them that's interesting. You try to remain as curious as possible, because if you don't, then you can't fake that caring piece. Because curious can also be interpreted as care, but you can't, if you're not curious, they're always going to interpret anything you do through the lens of, I don't trust this person.
That's what, like, you gave your kind of Disney movie example. I
Yeah.
see like, I watched the Disney, tell me about Frozen.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty, I feel like in a lot of situations, easy to see, like, you don't care about the movie Frozen.
Right.
But it's a step to get to that next step.
Right.
So, trying to avoid.
And this is where I would say, if I don't care about the movie Frozen, but my nieces do. So I just like, hey, my niece is named Kyla. Hey, tell me about Frozen. What is it about Frozen you like? What is it about that character you like? And then you just keep letting them make open-ended statements. That allows you to get there eventually. So don't rush the second piece, is what I would say. There was another hand, yeah.
Can I add on a layer, Destiny? What if you have a crier, but it's all hunky dory in the one-on-one, and then an hour later we're crying, or like not, and then every time we talk, it's not an honest.
Oh, that's going to be, I think that gets addressed with some of the stuff we're going to talk about, where we're creating a sense of psychological safety, and then you being vulnerable is going to get through that. Because if they see you're vulnerable and you're able to have that wall between boss and them, this doesn't mean bring your whole self to work, by the way. Sometimes that gets interpreted by bring your whole self to work. Well, let's say you're a racist, we don't want you to bring your whole self to work, right? But you being vulnerable will allow them to feel like they can express themselves and not cry. I just had somebody cry on Monday. Yeah, I had somebody cry on Monday, and they never would have cried in front of me 3 years ago. But I recently had one-on-ones with them, and we had 5 weeks of one-on-ones, and it was just, they finally felt comfortable. So I think creating psychological safety as a leader, we'll talk about that in a bit, is where that will, there's not a strategy necessarily, but I think you create an environment where everybody feels vulnerable. There is a sense of that they can then express themselves. And we'll talk about that in a second. I think so. Just real quick, state the action. We talked about that. Here's some examples. Some good ones. We talked about the ones for the good, because you get positive feedback too. So yeah, this is probably a good time for a break, because I think what we're going to do is just ask you to just maybe break into groups at your table and just run through a couple scenarios. Yeah, Bailey, is this the right good time for a break? Okay, so yeah, take your break. We'll come back. We'll try this. Yep.
See, that's the problem.
Maybe skip it. Sorry, shoot. But I expected you all would have performed admirably on this. But realizing, gosh, I don't know that I want to. I think you get the drift, but you can practice it. I'm giving you some examples. You can get these slides. Let's just get into this. So you guys have read this book or are reading this book. This is the radical candor model. She doesn't, in the book, she doesn't exactly give you a framework specifically like we do. So I've had to kind of adapt one from this. But as in a nutshell, you know this, there's a axis, Y and X. High care, high direct, passive or manipulative over here, don't care. And where you want to be is a place where you can give feedback and she says criticize and adjust. And I think the thing I want to take about this is not necessarily spend so much time on the model, just we're just pulling from that book though. For me, the main thrust is if you don't care about the folks personally, or and as we talked, if you don't have a lot of curiosity, it's hard to be direct because they will interpret that in such a way. So how do you do that? You know, how having one-on-ones is important. But if you're going to give feedback using this specific model, you know, how would you do that? Well, you've got to care. You want to be direct. You want to be specific. Just the same things we talked about in the other model. And then you want to be able to feedback yourself as well. That's something else in this book that the other model doesn't necessarily stress as much. But we talked about that when someone gets defensive, say, hey, listen, I may not be correct. It's just one person's perspective. So how could you use that feedback model? For me, and so there's some folks that they struggle with the other feedback model. And so we'll teach them this model. And it always starts out with reminding the person, as I did when I gave that example, that, hey, listen, I care about your success. Just remind them, I actually care about you. I'm not giving you this feedback because I want to hurt your feelings, make you cry, denigrate you, make you look bad in front of the boss. I'm actually giving this feedback for one important reason, because I care about your success. I want you to be successful. And you're a great asset too. That's why I care, because you're a great asset to this team. I wouldn't care if you weren't. So that's why I wanted to observe or reflect or pick your verb that when you, right? So you're getting kind of back into that feedback model. What you've done is the real difference between the model that we just talked about and the one where we add the radical candor philosophy to it is you're stating that you care about the person first. If you've been doing the one-on-ones, this will not be a surprise to them. They won't even debate that. Yeah, I know that Tom cares about me. So he just stated it, but I know that because we've been having one-on-ones. They won't say that out loud, but they'll sort of have internalized that because they're a human being. So you said the consequences, show you care. Again, if I was in your shoes, you heard me use that earlier. If I was in your shoes, I would want to know. So what you're doing there is a real subtle kind of, I don't say trick. You're showing you care, but you're also saying, listen, I have the ability to put myself in your place and understand that if I was in your place, I would really want to know what I'm about to tell you. And then if you have to keep showing you caring, you just, the big thing about this book is care. You've got to make sure they know that you care. Nobody's perfect. We're always improving, including me. How do you think we could fix that next time? So it's incorporating the two models, but it's allowing you some flexibility with the side of the book where you are really trying to lay that framework of that you're caring about the person that you're managing. The one thing I learned about reading when I read this book was that this is really objective. You know, just because you're the CEO or the boss doesn't mean your feedback's right. It's likely that it is, but it doesn't mean it is. It's just important to remember, just because you became CEO or manager, that your IQ didn't go up. You didn't become right more often, right? So I think, and sometimes I'll remind the person, again, especially when they're defensive, if they are, hey, yeah, this is one person's perspective. It doesn't mean that it's correct. It's just my perspective. Maybe we talk about this again. You talked about aberration. This goes back into some cognitive bias. Just because someone's late, don't assume it's because they are a bad person or have a character flaw. They're always late to everything. Maybe it's because their kid spilled some juice in the car. And by the way, the positive feedback is more highly correlated than negative feedback. I think that gets lost sometimes in this feedback model because we tend to do, again, we make the mistake of always doing negative feedback because that's the only time we think about the model. And this is an important point. Giving negative feedback isn't always necessarily correlated with performance, but positive feedback is. So you might say, well, Tom, then why ever give negative feedback? Well, because you'll have to sometimes because you have to change a specific behavior. That 5-to-1, 3-to-1 matters. This is sometimes I fall into this trap. I want to give feedback really badly about something. And I realize an hour later, a week later, a month later, maybe I didn't get a chance to give the feedback. It really wasn't that important. It didn't matter. The earth still spins. Ask yourself, what just happened that I'm going to give them feedback on? Does it affect the results of the team or keeping our people? Remember, your job is to get results, keep your people. The feedback you're about to give them, does it matter to that? If not, it might not be relevant to have feedback. Just because you can give feedback doesn't mean that you need to. Just because you don't like Bailey's coffee mug and you want to give her feedback doesn't mean that it affects the results of the team. So you don't need to give feedback on the coffee mug. It's not a big deal. That's a crazy example, but there are other subtler things you think might be feedback instances that in retrospect, it's like, oh, I don't really need to do that. They moved on, we've moved on. It's a one-off. I didn't even need to do that. So just make sure you ask yourself that question. And then occasionally you get this. I think I heard somebody talking in the group. I sometimes have employees that are high achievers who they insist that you give them feedback, right? I demand that you give me feedback. Tom, all you ever do is give me positive feedback. You don't ever give me any negative. I demand that you tell me what I'm doing wrong. You've got nothing because they're great. You could just say this because they're smart. This goes back to coaching. It's a little bit up from the coaching piece. Hey, what do you think you could have done better? You were there. What do you think? You worked on the project. I thought it went really well. What do you think we could have improved? How do you think you could have done it? Then it has them shift their perspective. And then they're going to tell you the feedback that they probably wanted you to tell them anyway. That you didn't know, but they wanted to hear. But that's a way to kind of reverse, do a little jujitsu on them. So that again is kind of more of a framework if you want to incorporate the book into that. Here's some frequently asked questions we get a lot. Do I have to give feedback? I think so. How many times do you have to give feedback before I can fire somebody? I would say it's at least 6 or 7 times before you say, hey, maybe this isn't working. Well, what's going on here? They show up late. Hey, can I talk about the meeting today? You showed up late, giving them feedback. They do it again and again and again and again. 7 or 8 times. It's affecting the performance of the team. Now we're going to have a conversation. Hey, why isn't this getting through to you? What's going on? Do you need more resources? What's going on? Do you want to be here? It doesn't seem like you want to because I keep giving this feedback and you don't want to change the behavior. But that comes a while after you give the feedback. Can I give feedback on performance as well? Yeah, not just behavior, but also performance. Hey, can I make an observation about the sales funnel? Yeah. It was awesome that you got 14 closes. Our average is 10. You're 4 above that. Great work. Keep it up. So performance and behavior. What do I do when they keep saying no? I've just never really seen that happen. Again, if they're saying no, then they're on to you. They know what you're about to do. You probably don't know them very well. You're not doing your one-on-ones. Maybe they weren't the right hire. It's pretty rare, really, really rare. But if you find it, let me know. I'd love to know more about it. Can I call feedback something else? Yes. Observation, perspectives. But at the end of the day, you're still going to be focusing on behavior. Should I encourage my directs to give me feedback? Typically not. Here's why. The board, so it's your boss or your board that is in charge of your future behavior. It's not your direct's job to change your behavior or get your results. It's your job to do for them. So typically it doesn't reverse very well. I've seen it. Typically, if you're going to do the reversal, you're going to do a colleague. I get colleagues too. So let's say you're on the same part of the org chart as somebody else and you want to give them some feedback, right? But you're not their boss. You know that you can't force them to do it. What you would probably do is you just cut off the permission piece. You're not going to ask them for permission. Excuse me. You cut off, not the first, you cut off the end. Hey, how can we fix that? Because it's not your job to fix their performance. You're just trying to give them feedback about something else. So, hey, Rick, can I talk about the meeting we just had? You're not their boss. He says, yeah, sure. Hey, I noticed when you did this happens, and this is how it makes me feel. You know, what are your thoughts on that? Am I wrong? So it's just slightly different. You're not asking, hey, can we change that? Can we fix that? Because you're not going to ultimately be responsible for them. But you can certainly try it. Don't sandwich negative compliments between two positives. And then we just talked about the peers. And that's a mistype. You don't want to review the first step. You still want to ask for permission because that's just, courteous. Okay. So we talked about getting to know your people. You've got a tool for that. A form, even if you want the form. We talked about performance. We give you a structure and a tool for that, 2 or 3 structures. So getting to know our people, talking about performance. Now we've done 2 of the 4 things to get results and take care of our people. Now you're going to ask for more. This is a lot simpler. It doesn't take long. So coaching is a doing. It's to improve performance. Not necessarily change it, but improve it. You can't do the work for them. And it's collaborative. Just remember this. And we talked about this earlier in a slide. A good way to coach somebody is just to flip the question. I do this all the time to my staff because, again, you don't know everything as a CEO. I'll get probably 5 or 6 times a day. Tom, what should we do about this? Hey, Tom, what do you think about this investor? Or Tom, what should we do about this? Or what this? Someone will come to me, Lonnie or Liz or Shiloh or Bailey. What do you think we should do? Because you're supposed to be the CEO and you're supposed to have all the answers. A good way to coach somebody is just to flip that, saying, what do you think? How do you think we can make this better? How do you think that went? If you're allowing them to have an agency again, and there's a dialogue there, and you're allowing them to come to the solution themselves in a conversation with you. Now, there's coaches out there that tell you what to do when they know that you don't know. But if you're coaching someone in a professional setting, which most of you are in, it's a better option to just flip it around and say, hey, what do you think we should do? Here's what I did one time, maybe when I was younger or in a different job. But what do you think? Let's have a conversation about that. So just general in terms throughout your day. One way to get coaching in all day long without you really having to do much work is when someone asks you, hey, boss, what should we do about this? And it's not a life and death event, or it's not directly related to you. It's to say, what do you think? Give them the chance to have that dialogue with you. It gives you a chance to coach them and them to come up with a solution themselves as well. It gets back to that agency. We'll talk about that in a moment, which drives meaning in life and work. So how can you coach more specifically? This comes at the end of your one-on-ones. Remember when I said first 10 minutes are them? Sometimes it's the whole time for them, about them. Then the next 10 minutes are you. Then there's 5 or 10 minutes at the end where we talk about your future. This is a good chance for you to do the coaching. You want to collaborate, set the goal, brainstorm resources, create a plan, and then they act and follow back up. It's really fast. I'll give you an example. So Liz is our director of operations. Great person. She also handles accounting. She doesn't have a background in accounting. So when we first started having one-on-ones, and I said, hey, Liz, I think I'm going to put accounting in your department. Oh my God, she was freaking out. But I knew she could do it, right? I knew she would grow into the job, and she has. But what I would say at the end of our one-on-ones. She'd talk about what was important to her. I might talk about what's important to me. Okay, we've got a little bit of time to talk about your future. Hey, what do you think is important to you? Is there any kind of training or anything you want to, where you want to get? She'd say, yeah, I really need to get this accounting. Okay. Well, what resources do you think are out there for you to maybe get what you need? She comes up with some, and you might think of some too. Well, hey, I know this podcast. Or hey, what if we have you go meet with the CFO of Black Hills Corp, or the comptroller of the hospital? Or here's a book, right? You brainstorm. So first they talk, and you talk about what the training should be. Then you brainstorm on the solutions, podcasts, books, whatever it is, mentoring. You agree on what that's going to look like, and then she follows, or he follows up. So it might be, Liz, okay, you want to learn cost accounting? Well, here's a book I remember. What do you think about that? Would you want to maybe read a couple chapters a week or a chapter a week, and we just continue to talk about it? Yeah, okay. Well, here's a book. Get that book. Read the first chapter. I'll read the first chapter too by the end of next week, and we'll talk about it, right? So as you're doing this, you're doing it at the end of your meeting. It's very quick. You're brainstorming resources. You're coming up with a plan. You don't have to do the plan with them, but you can if you want. Here's a podcast that maybe would work for you. Do you think that would work? So they're agreeing to the plan. And then next week, you're going to check in at the end of your one-on-one again. Hey, how's that going? Maybe we go to chapter 2. What gave you problems? Stuff like that. So if everybody in your organization imagines doing this at the end of their one-on-one, what you're doing is now the performance incrementally, right? It's small each week, but over time, the organization's capacity and talent gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and better. Sometimes you can decide whether you think Elevate's a successful organization or not. That's not really me to say, but I will get people that come up to me and say, hey, Tom, you did a great job with Elevate. You've been here 6 years. You got a great team. Oh, you must know what you're doing. And it really isn't. It's just, I meet with my folks one-on-one, and I come up with a plan to help them improve their performance, often with little budget. And then they just start performing. It really is this simple. If everybody in your organization, let's say you're 1,000 strong and everybody's doing this with everyone in the directs, imagine 5 years how talented the organization becomes, because everybody's growing incrementally in small doses. And it can be very, very small. So when Liz and I agreed on a book, I think it was actually Accounting for Dummies or something, I think it was. Okay, she's going to read 1 chapter a week. That's it. And then we're going to talk about it. And then she's done with that book. And then we're going to keep doing that. Might be something for somebody else, maybe a podcast. Or you might say, hey, I need you to go meet with this person and come back next week and we'll talk about this. So you're agreeing to the coaching. They're agreeing to the coaching. You're coming up with a plan together. This is super simple. Of all the things that we're teaching you, the 4 things, this is the easiest one because it takes the least amount of time and effort on your part, because you're just agreeing, you're thinking, you're brainstorming, you're coming up with a plan, and they're executing and they're coming back to you. You could make this bigger if you want, like more coaching, like a special part of what you're doing with this person is coaching, and they're going to take on more professional development. But if you're just trying to improve the whole organization with all your directs over time, you can do this very quickly at the end of your meeting. So again, we give you the first tool, meet with your directs. Here's a form, get to know your people. Second tool, talk about performance. You've got a feedback model and a structure, 2 of them. Now you've got the third piece, which is to coach. And it only takes 5 to 10 minutes. You can do more, but if this is all the time you have, because you're all busy people, you can do this as well. And it only takes a few minutes a day, or sorry, a week. Okay, so get results by taking care of our people, get to know our people, talk about performance, coaching. We're 3/4 of the way there. Oh, I just summarized it in a page. I should have put this up. Yeah, so it can be small books, podcast chapter, 1 podcast a week. Yeah, okay, we talked about that. Okay, the 4th thing is to delegate. This is sometimes hard for micromanagers. The gentleman I told you about earlier, in which he wasn't doing one-on-ones, one of his other traits that did not endear him to the organization was he was a micromanager. He could not delegate. So this is a no joke. He would demand to see many of the emails you'd send out first. Hey, show me the draft email you're going to send to the governor. What? Wait, what? Okay, you're the CEO of an organization. Presumably, you're very busy, and you're now asking me to show you my emails for approval. Yes. Wow, okay, this is not going to go well, I don't think. Eventually, this person would always say to me during our one-on-ones, God, I'm so busy. I just wish I wasn't so busy. Well, yeah, you're busy because you're creating all this extra work for you and you're not trusting your people. You certainly don't get to know them. You're not coaching them, you're micromanaging them. So part of our system is don't be like that guy. Delegate work. Why delegate? Just like coaching, it allows people to have agency and grow the organization over time. It provides the autonomy and creativity, which the research shows drives meaning in work and in life. And it improves the performance over time. Number one and number three are kind of saying the same thing. This is going to get complicated. I could teach you the simple system, but let me do the complex system first. So let's say you guys are so busy, right? This could be 80 hours, 100 hours, maybe it's 40. I don't know. This is for you. I'm just using an example. This is your work day. Sorry, your work week. This is your directs work week. You each have a series of, let's call them projects or balls of projects. Some are bigger, that's A. Some are smaller, that's B. But you can only pack a certain amount in your day or in your week, rather, to get all that done. Now the board comes to you, the boss comes to you, and they say, hey, we're going to add. They never do this, right? Never add. They always subtract. Not really. They always add. So your board comes, you say, we need you to do, this just happened to me. Tom, we need you to buy this building in downtown. Not this building, a building near here. Oh shit, I don't have the time for that. Something's got to go, right? I can't fit, that's a rule. You can't now work 120 hours. That's the problem with, I think, burnout is when people that get burned out, they actually think that they can increase their box size, when the truth is you're not going to be able to do that. So that's one of the rules is you only have a certain amount of hours per week. You get a new project. What do? The answer is now you delegate. You should delegate. What does that look like? For you, you're very smart, you're creative, you're talented, you're at the top of your profession. So your giant A ball, if you give it to your directs, or sorry, your big A is your four little B's for your directs. You can't work any more hours. So the answer is to now delegate. This is what you do. So you now have additional work. You then take 4 of your little B's, which equates to that 1A. And now you've thrown that down to your direct. Guess what your direct's going to do? Now they're going to delegate something, theoretically, to their direct. And sometimes I get this question, what happens when all the balls come going down the hill and they get down to the person, the low man on the totem pole, right? What are they going to do? They're just going to accumulate all of them? No, they're going to get rid of crap that doesn't matter to the organization. There are stuff that people are doing in your organization right now that you don't need them to do. They're wasting their time on. They can get rid of those things that are inefficient and come up with things that are more efficient. So this delegation system actually ends up creating efficiency in your organization as well, because now all those small 4 balls that Mary in accounting are doing, like maybe monitoring your time, you come to work, she's not going to do that anymore because she's going to have the time. She's going to have to actually do something more efficient, right? So this is why delegation matters in terms of the technical side of the efficiency. Okay, so this is why, because stuff happens, you're going to delegate it down, you become more efficient. What to delegate? Don't delegate something that is critical to your job. And then everything else, go ahead and do, with some caveats. Don't delegate things that they can't handle. So I've seen directs or the bosses, it's kind of I think it's kind of mean to give your directs something that you know they can't handle at all, like 80% of out of their zone. The sweet spot is this place we call flow, this creative zone where you're just 10 to 20% outside of your capacity. You're able to do it, but not quite. That's the state of flow. That's where they're creative. Again, it brings meaning. It gives them a chance to learn and grow. Of course, you're going to give them advice if they need it. They're going to come to you. Don't delegate anything that puts them in harm's way. So don't, take that same person, Mary from accounting, and now make her in charge of, building security or something. That's silly because you're putting them in harm's way at that point. That's not their job. Silly example, but I've seen it all. Especially if you're trying to fire somebody. Have you seen this, right? Where they reassign somebody to a job that's not theirs and they hope they'll quit. You want to prioritize what the organization needs over what the direct wants. So your direct may want to say, and I've had this happen, we had this happen the other day, I want to get more involved in this part of the organization. Okay, well, the organization doesn't need that. And that's not really your job anyway. So prioritize what the organization needs. It's kind of fun if somebody gets involved in something else and maybe you need to be backstopped, but prioritize the organization. And then when in doubt, ask yourself, what does the organization need from this person? What is their core job? So if they're an accountant, they're not necessarily going to be in sales. You're not going to delegate some sales thing to them. Yeah.
What happens when you're in a situation where running fairly lean, you don't have a lot of excess time, where if you do delegate something that is that 10, 20% out, it's going to take someone below you a little bit more time to do that. Other projects that they're working on are going to suffer because they need to take more time to learn. It's going to help in the long run because now they're going to know how to do it the next time. It's going to push them forward as an employee, but at the time, other things are going to suffer. Is that something you just have to kind of work that inefficiency into kind of long term?
Yeah. It's like one-on-ones. It's not very efficient for me to watch cat videos, right? At the time, it's not efficient. But I know that the efficiency is coming because I will then get the most out of that person long term. So I'm willing to sacrifice short-term cat videos. Even if, actually, I might even like them. But the organization, like your board is not going to be like, why are you watching cat videos? Or I'd like you to watch more cat videos. But you're sacrificing the time with the cat videos, knowing that they're going to ultimately be more efficient down the road. Same with this stuff. There's going to be opportunities for you to delegate. It's right outside their comfort zone. They're going to come to you and ask. And I've had managers say this, well, I could just do this faster. I don't know why I should just do this. They keep asking me questions. I should just go ahead and do this. No, you shouldn't. They'll eventually become efficient and that'll make up and help you in the organization. But right now you've got to ignore that opportunity cost because the opportunity savings is bigger down the road. It's kind of like, the time value of money down here is going to be bigger because the boulder and the principal is going to be compounding higher if you're in finance versus like, oh, this is not efficient for me today. So yeah, I think I absolutely do this. I do this all the time, actually. Even on stuff I love, like I love to structure deals. I love spreadsheets. I have a master's degree in finance. So I like it, enjoy it. I love doing it, but it's not my core mission. And so I know I've got to delegate that down. And I could easily do the spreadsheet and do it faster than Bailey, for instance. But I know that I can't do that because it's not going to help her or the organization long term. Another model, sometimes I think I should just do away with the boxes and the balls because they're kind of complicated and they're very busy. And just show you this. Here's a matrix. People like matrices. If the employee has the skill and the will, delegate, praise, endorse, collaborate. If they've got the skill and little of the will or desire, actually, sorry, it's in this one. If they've got the skill, they have high skills and low motivation, a will, you want to then tap into their motivators. You're essentially selling them on the idea, identify constraints that they might have. Because you'll have sometimes employees that can do something, you need to delegate it to them, they don't want to. It's not fun. Accounting might be one of those. If they've got a high will, they want to really do it, but low skill, obviously you know what you're going to need to do there. Get them some resources, train them, coach them to the point where they can get close to that zone, that 20% zone. And then finally, if they've got low skill and low will, but you need them to do it, you're going to really have to spend a lot of time getting them there. The whole point of showing you this is, when do I delegate? In a nutshell, without thinking about 2 balls, 4 balls, et cetera, is just say, if the person has the skill set and the willpower, or they want to, and the ability, and it's close, delegate that. Absolutely do it. Okay, any questions on that first? This is probably easier for me to think of when I'm in the moment. Like, okay, I really want to do that thing. I like it all the time. Okay, does Bailey have the desire and the skill? Yeah, okay. I love it, but I should delegate it to her. Okay, hey Bailey, would you do this for me? Yeah, I'd love to. I'm usually thinking this. I'm right here. This is my mental model that I'm using very, very quickly if I'm having to make a decision really fast. And sometimes you will. Something will come at you. Do I delegate it right now? I don't know. Use this mental model. Boom. That's the quickest way to get there. Okay. So get results by taking care of your people. How do you do that? Know your people. Focus on performance. So we've given you a form for this. We've given you a form, verbal form, structure for this. Coaching, again, you can do that 5 minutes. Come up with a plan, ask about their future, have them follow up, or also constantly go out through the day. What do you guys think? What do you think we should do? I'm the CEO, but I don't know anything. Sometimes I do that. Pretend you don't know anything. You're the CEO. You're the manager. Actually, go to work and pretend you don't know anything. Pretend you don't know jack shit about what's going on today. You don't know. Just start asking questions. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? What should we do? I don't know what to do. What do you guys think we should do? Watch how you get reactions. First, it'll be like weird, but then eventually they'll start to say, well, I think we should do this. Well, shit, that's a better idea than I thought. They should probably be CEO, but don't tell anybody because I don't want them to take my job, right? And then finally, delegate and push work down. I would say 50 to 75% of this whole thing is this. If you can just do this, the other stuff is not going to matter. If you want the advanced stuff, get after it. You'll be even better. But the first one is the most important thing. Get to know your people, whether it's through a one-on-one. I would suggest doing it that way, but there are other methods to do it too. Like I said, my former boss would do it on potty breaks. He would just go and walk by the office and spend some time, getting to know what's going on. Okay. If you're doing all this, you don't have to have crazy forms with scoring matrix and all these things. You can do a really simple, these are our annual reviews. So we're having one-on-ones. We're giving feedback real time right now on the spot. I don't have to give much feedback now on my performance reviews because I've been giving feedback throughout the year on performance. You're coaching them, you're delegating down. These are simple forms that we use. This can become a comedy show. I use Luke Skywalker as my example for those that like Star Wars. If he's being evaluated by Master Yoda, this might be what he would say. We don't have time to go through this, but basically your strengths, your opportunities for growth, your guidance for the upcoming year, we're done, and a summary of what they've done. Because you're doing all the things to get the performance that you need from them throughout the year. Feedback, coaching, meeting with them. They're going to stop talking about cat videos and start talking about performance eventually. So you're not going to be surprising them with anything. You're not blindsiding them. This is as simple as it gets one-page evaluation form. So you can put it together that way. If you want a copy of this, let me know. So getting back to this thing we call management. We just talked about execution, day-to-day, that it's hard work. It's why you get fired or get promoted. We talked about all those things. Now, let's switch back from management. So we just talked about how to be a good manager. Now let's do a little bit on leadership, even though I don't really like a lot of TED Talks and books on this topic. What they're really talking about when they talk about all those mystical terms like change management, transformation, all the self-help books, strategic planning, for me, we're going to be getting into more of a, this goes back to if someone's going to cry in front of you, why would they cry? Why would someone express to you what's really going on in their world? It's because you're driving meaning. You're focusing on them as a human being and the depth of them as a person, even if you don't like them. You're trying to create psychological safety. And then you're trying to make a difference in their lives. I tell this to my staff a lot. Feel free to steal this if you want. I don't know how Bailey felt about this when I first did this, but I said, hey guys, here's the goals and the metrics for the organization. And I'll actually show you ours in a second. Here's our goals and our metrics, and this is what board's gonna want us to measure. But I have a secret goal for you all that I don't tell the board about. Do you wanna know what it is? Yeah, of course they do. It is that you will fulfill your potential and be a better human. Like, I don't even care. The board can fire me, fine. We didn't get our metrics. I'd rather you leave here as a better human than I care if you hit your results. I believe that in my bones. And I believe that if you say that and you feel that those results are going to come anyway. So my secret goal for the staff is to be a better human being and to live up to their potential. My job as a leader, not necessarily as a manager, that's the day-to-day execution. My job as a leader, and leaders can come from anywhere. They don't have to be your boss. They can come from anywhere in the org chart. This is the job of what a leader does. So this is more of a promotional resume thing, management, right? You're the boss. Someone appointed you the boss, you got the job. So that's about your resume stuff. This is really about your eulogy stuff. Like, when you're gone, what are they going to say about you? What are the people that work for you going to say about you? So let's talk about that. Driving meaning at work is not too hard. The people that work for you, they want to know fundamentally. They might not even realize this or be able to articulate it. But as the research has become very clear, people want to take their individual skills, they want to fulfill their potential in a way that allows them to be bigger than themselves, which is what you want your company and your mission to hopefully accomplish them. And if you create an environment in your workplace that does this, people are going to come to work saying, okay, they care about me at work. They want me to be successful. I'm going to use all of my abilities and my individual skills. They're going to focus on my strengths to do something bigger than myself. People, even if they lie to you, they all fundamentally want to do something and be greater than themselves. It's true. Here's a couple other ways to think about it. So there's a acronym if you're into acronyms and you need mnemonic devices for you to remember stuff. It's called SCARF: status, creativity, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. These are what the research tells us drive meaning at work. I would submit to you, if you're a fan of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, these things are doing everything at the top two levels where you're driving somebody's self-esteem and their self-actualization. So assuming that they've got water and food and shelter, of course, they probably wouldn't have a job if they didn't, that they're safe at work, you're creating a safe environment, that's kind of goes without saying. Then for you as a boss, trying to drive those next three layers: love, esteem, love, okay, love. Could even be like, self-esteem, and then self-actualization. But you can do it in a way that helps them feel like they've got status. Have you ever had someone come to you and say, I don't care about the money, I just want the title? That's what they're telling you. They might care about the money, maybe they're lying about the money part, but people want to feel and know where they stand in the organization. They want to feel like they have status in the tribe. It's one of the reasons why I don't really care. I care, but I don't care often what the title is of the persons that work with me and for me, because I know that it matters to them. And so we're going to come up with a title that makes them feel like they have status. Now, you're not going to say, like in the office, assistant to the regional director, or whatever Dwight Schrute says, if it's not true, right? But you can come up with creative ways to use title to engender and empower status into the folks that work with you. So it doesn't always have to be manager of accounting. It could be something more interesting to that person. As long as it's descriptive of what they're doing, it helps them feel like they have importance to their firm, to the organization, to the tribe, to themselves. So status matters. Creativity. We talked about why you want to ask somebody for permission. We talked about why you want to give somebody the chance to be coached. What do you all think we should do? This is what's happening. You're doing two at once, actually. You're giving them autonomy and creativity over their surroundings. relatedness. They want to feel safe around others. Like there's no, people aren't toxic. I'm going to be talking about that a little bit, and that it's a fair environment. So if they feel like they have status, creativity, autonomy, there's a sense of fairness, and people are related to a larger goal, you're going to drive meaning at work. It's the same way you drive meaning in life. Viktor Frankl wrote an amazing book, A Man's Search for Meaning, about his concentration camp experience in World War II. It's a great read if you have a chance to read it. But he was fascinated by why some people could find meaning in a concentration camp when they saw their like grandmothers and aunts going off to the gas chamber. Some of you probably thought I was about to cry, right? No, it's my voice just cracking because I don't have water. I might actually cry though. It's a pretty compelling and amazing story. Anyway, so he survives the concentration camp. He's about to get gassed, but the Americans come and he gets liberated, right? He watched a lot of people go to the gas chamber. He said, hey, well, how do they find meaning in a place like this? And what they would find meaning is if they had a why or a what to live for. Like even if they knew they were going to die, they had a bigger thing that they were thinking about, like their kids back home, or maybe they were thinking about, I don't care that I'm dying because I'm doing it for the Jews or whatever at the time. So it goes back to this, like people want to be bigger than themselves. So in his book, he talks about this, no matter what your situation in life is, find that why, and you can survive anything. So yeah, check that book out. It's an amazing book, but it gets around what drives meaning in tough situations and what you can use some of the lessons. But remember this acronym if you're wondering, just like how can I get a mental model into this zone? If it's Maslow's, you can do that too. There's some other ways to drive meaning. So everything we're just going to talk about right here. The acronym, these are some tricks you can use. And I do it all the time. Usually once a month, we're going to talk about our mission. We're going to bring up our mission. We're going to bring our core values. We're going to talk about it as a staff. So they remember, why are we here? I remember when I got to Elevate, the mission was 10 sentences long. And it was built by a consultant where there was a clause. It's like everybody got in a room with sticky notes and they made a mission statement. So we cut our mission statement down to 7 words, I think. It could have been 5 if Rapid City was less than 2 words, but it was elevate the region for all. Why do we exist? What's our why? To elevate the region elevate the economy for all, regional economy for all, sorry. It was elevate the region for all at first, and then we changed it to economy because we're an economic development group. But the point is that we took the mission statement and made it easy to remember. All the staff members remember it. All the board members remember it. We tie ourselves to it. Is it going to be part of our mission? We tie our core values to it, elevating the regional economy for all. So you focus on that mission. If you don't have a mission statement you can remember right now, probably is a good opportunity for you to change your mission. If you can't remember your mission, if your employees and you and your board don't know what your mission is, they have to get a business card to read it. Okay, what's our mission? Oh, let me remember here. It's this. That's not good. It's not driving meaning. It's not making people feel like they're connected to you. Same with core values. Well, I'll show you what our core values are in a second, but talk about those. Here's one that's gets lost when we talk about feedback. Typically, you want to focus on strengths and not weaknesses. It's easier for someone to use their strength to fulfill their potential than to work on a weakness. Now, yes, somebody like Michael Jordan is going to shoot 1,000 free throws because that's a weakness and he's going to turn it into a strength. But typically, most people you're going to work with, you're better to just leverage their strengths than try to get them to change their weaknesses. You're going to get higher results that way. So what we do is we want to know what our strengths are. So we use a tool called DISC. You can use Strength Finders or Myers-Briggs or something else. We want everybody to know what their strengths are. I want to know what their strengths are too, so I can leverage those strengths versus trying to say, you've got to change your behavior. So if Bailey's really creative, I'm not going to say, oh, I should make Bailey do cost accounting. It's not her strength. I want to leverage her strength. So we use DISC and we try to find out what folks have as strengths so we can leverage those. Be vulnerable. That's easy for me to say, right? It's easy for me to say be vulnerable at work and create psychological safety. I'll give you an example. So when Google did their study about psychological safety and team members and what makes teams successful, they had a story of a guy who was a leader, and he tells his team one day that he's got cancer. Typically, as a boss, you're not going to do that. Typically, because bosses are supposed to know all the answers. They're supposed to never be weak. They're supposed to just know where they're going. But he tells his team that he's got cancer, right? It immediately created a sense of vulnerability in this person, which created a sense of psychological safety of the team. Well, if the boss is willing to talk about their life and what they're struggling with, then it's okay for me too. So that goes back to your crying piece. I'm trying to think of maybe a story from my own work. Oh yeah, so when my mom was going, my mom had cancer. She was dying from pancreatic cancer. I had to go back and forth and take care of her. And at first, I didn't tell the team. I didn't tell the board. I drove back and forth in the middle of the night. But finally, I'm like, why am I doing this? This is stupid. Just tell them. So I cried. I told the team. But it made me feel way more connected to them. And then I know that made them feel more connected to me. And it was amazing how much that they were opening up after that in our one-on-ones. Storytelling. So I told you I used to be a screenwriter. One of the things that taught me was the power of stories. Facts, data make people think. Stories make people move. Stories make people act. If you have a graph that says, we should decrease poverty in Rapid City by 10%, and you've got a graph. Okay, fine. There might be a couple data nerds that see it and say, oh yeah, I get it. But nothing beats a story of a person that is in poverty, that you've gotten out of poverty. That's why when Cornerstone does their fundraisers, they bring the guy out who used to be on the street, who's now on their board, who makes a good living. Because that's a story that illustrates what they do versus data. They raise way more money based on that story. So stories can be used by you as a manager. This goes back to coaching, but asking for help. People want to grow and be creative together. They want to solve problems. So ask your team, what do you guys think? What do you think we should do? I don't know all the answers. I don't know. What should we do, Tom? Should we go? Should we recruit that company? I don't know. What do you guys think? Chances are you probably don't know. Number two, you're giving them a chance to participate in the decision. Give thanks. This should be a no-brainer, right? But sometimes it's not. We try to take time to recognize people for their birthdays, how long they've worked for us. We have a chance in our staff meetings. We have a lightning round where people go around and talk about what their priorities are this week. Everybody gets to participate. We have a staff of like 15, so we're able to do that. But one of the things that we allow our folks to do is give shout outs. Hey, I want to give a shout out this week to Bailey for helping me on whatever. It's a systematic way of us recognizing each other and the things that we do for each other to make the team successful. And then be transparent. When I have a budget issue, I share it with the team. When we have to cut budgets, I share with the team. I share why we have to cut budgets. So don't think that you got to hide off in a castle. If people know the why and the what, they will help you. So there's some ways you can drive meaning that goes back to this, but just some specifics. Oh, for us, I promise you this. That's our vision. Make Rapid City the place people want to be, retirees, entrepreneurs, we don't care, be here. Our mission is to elevate the Rapid City economy for all. These are our core values. And we talk about these a lot. What separates you from everybody else? If you're at work on a random Thursday afternoon, which you will be today, I think, what directs you how to behave to each other? These are the core values, right? So for us, our core values are we want to be the hardest working economic development group in the country. We want to go the extra mile. Hard work is a part of our value set. We want to face challenges. If you're going to do economic development and elevate Rapid City, you've got to be willing to face challenges. So we make that a core value. Lead change that matters. We can change this place. We could really grow this place. Just grow the numbers. But what does it lead to sustainability for our kids? What does that look like? So we want to lead change that actually matters to the community. And then finally, we want to make sure that we know that we rely on each other. So we want to collaborate to win. So we talk about these once a month. I'd probably do it every single staff meeting every week if I had a chance, but I don't want to overwhelm them. Like, God, Tom's always talking about these core values. Once a month is pretty much good enough for us. How does it incorporate into all the other stuff? So this is our org chart functionally. So we do economic development, entrepreneurship, workforce, military affairs, business advocacy, analytics, growth, community development, our foundation, small business, comms, and then we have executive stuff undergirding all of it. That's a functional org chart, all the stuff that we do with Elevate. I would encourage you to do that someday. Instead of doing it like a personal org chart, do a functional org chart. What do we do? What are our programs? What you do is you flip that on its head. So all this stuff at the top, oops, now goes over here. These are our pillars and our divisions and our people. They go into our 1-year outputs, stuff that we can control. These are our real outputs at Elevate. They feed into our, I don't know if I can do this right. I'm not gonna try the red light. Is there a red light on this, Bailey? Red light? No? No, I'm just gonna point. Okay. So they feed into our 1-year goals, which feed into our 5-year goals, which feed into our mission. So it's like an accordion. What is our mission? Elevate the regional economy for all. How do we know we've done that? 5,000 jobs, increase in consumer spending by 250 million a year, increase in wages by 15%, increase in capex by 400 million, and labor force participation greater than the national average. So we've got 5 big goals. That's how we know we've done what we said we're going to do with our mission. And then everything feeds into that. Then notice under here, the core values are the foundation from which we do all this. So for those that are data geeks and nerds, and you want to see that stuff, all the esoteric stuff I just talked about manifests itself in all of this, all the one-on-ones and the feedback and the coaching and the driving meaning at work through the mission and goals and everything else. It all lends itself into a nice, pretty picture that you can show to anybody. I would say in my career, which is almost 25 years now, a little more probably every year, I think it's 25 years, but it gets higher. I get called up, 2 things I get called on nationally. I get called on to how do you do a merger chamber and an economic development group? That's all the rage now. So we get called on that. But I get called on this probably once a week from somebody across the country or in the community saying, hey, what the hell? This is cool. How did you do this? How did you get your mission and then the metrics and then the 1-year goals and then the outputs feed into all the people? Like, this is really cool. It's what I'm showing you today. It's the system that we're showing you. So it all works itself out and manifests itself into something tangible. So all the stuff I'm teaching you is not just esoteric bullshit. It's not touchy-feely. It's real stuff. We've done this now for 2 5-year campaigns, and we're not going to miss those goals. Now, it might be luck. It might be because Rapid City's growing. We were the 36th fastest growing city in the country in 2021, 22, 37th. So we might just have got lucky. But I would submit to you that even if we got lucky, we're still doing the right thing. And then here's what this is where I was gonna be like, this is the most profound thing I'm gonna say, right? Okay, all that stuff I just taught you. To get to drive meaning, the people are taking their individual goals to something bigger than themselves, which is the mission. We're elevating the regional economy for all. What did I just do? I self-actualized myself as a CEO, but all the people that work with me and for me, they're also, by doing this, now driving meaning in their lives because they're connected to that mission, which goes into Maslow's hierarchy of needs to self-actualization. I hope this makes sense to you. It's kind of like a lot. I'm trying to throw a lot at you all at once and put it all together in one little pretty picture. And this is what it looks like. I personally think. I think it's one of the reasons why we don't have a lot of turnover too. Sure, we pay well. We've got great benefits. But if you were to ask Bailey and any of the folks that work at Elevate, I would say that they feel connected to the mission, connected to the organization, connected to their jobs. They feel the meaning for it. Okay, psychological safety. What is it? You're not going to get punished for speaking up, basically. You, the boss, are not going to punish them, no matter what they say or do. Now, there's borders there, right? I once had a guy forward a signature. I once had a guy forward his boss's signature. I had to fire him. So I couldn't create psychological safety because he couldn't just do anything, right? There's boundaries, right? So when I give you something like this, there are boundaries to it. Don't touch people in their private parts. Don't, shoot, don't bring a gun to work. There's things that you're like, okay, certain levels of psychological safety find themselves butting up against other things. But basically, if your team feels safe to bring stuff up at work and not be punished, that you've got psychological safety. What does it look like? You want to reframe mistakes. You want to share your own mistakes. Bailey can attest to this. In our one-on-one, sometimes I'll tell a story. Hey, Bailey, this one time I did this, it went really bad. I really made a bad decision. And I just want you to know, like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing sometimes. You're sharing that vulnerability yourself so they can feel like the boss is free to make mistakes, will make mistakes, does make mistakes, and doesn't punish himself or herself. So it's okay for me to try things and maybe make mistakes too. Encourage all voices. This is not some big DEI lecture, like you have to have everybody at the table and it has to represent race and age and gender and all those things. It's simply about making sure that folks that are in your care have a chance to speak. One of the reasons why we do our staff meetings the way we do is my priorities this week are interspersed with the staff's priorities so that the CEO stuff doesn't have any higher level than everybody else's. So Ashley, my administrative assistant, she gets a chance to talk about her priority this week. And we elevate her priorities to the same level as mine. So everybody gets to hear about what's going on, what's your priorities. They all get a chance to speak. It's not, and you've seen this in staff meetings, I'm sure. I used to be in an organization where only the directors were allowed to speak. So it became this pissing match. The CEO was there, became a pissing match between the division directors trying to talk about what they were doing to impress the CEO. Because not all the voices were there. It was not an effective staff meeting. So we encourage a lot of voices to be heard. And we even say, listen, there are going to be some dumb ideas. It's fine. We want your dumb ideas because some of them are going to be good. Some of my ideas are going to be really, really bad. I can't tell you how many times, I think Bailey did this to me last week. I said, Bailey, we should do this. She's like, no, I don't think so. Like, wait, who's the boss around here again? Well, I mean, then so Bailey, this is why, Tom. Oh, all right. Yeah, I don't know why I thought about that. I must have been high in caffeine or something. Okay. Appreciation. We talked about this. Contribute, acknowledge. One of the quick ways we do it is we have shout outs and acknowledgement. You can do it in a whole variety of ways. Recognition, ritual, you can do all those things. But also give special thanks to people who bring up some things that are hard. So you'll sometimes hear me in a staff meeting say, someone will bring something up and I'll invariably see somebody else on the other side of the room like roll their eyes. Like, oh God, I can't believe they brought that up. Or, oh, I don't know why we're gonna bring that up. And I'll say, hey, thanks for bringing it up. That's hard. You're brave. I appreciate that. So it's brave of you to bring it up because it's hard. It's something we're gonna talk about. So stuff that's hard, make sure that that gets recognized as well for the fact that you're trying to do that hard stuff. Have we talked about coaching? If your directs aren't coaching, make sure you talk to them about this. Let's say you're doing a good job. I'm coaching. I have 5 directs. I'm coaching them. Make sure you're talking to them about coaching their directs too, because sometimes that gets lost in the translation. You're doing a good job with your directs, but maybe they're not thinking, they're just doing the one-on-one piece. And they're not doing the coaching piece. Just make sure you're reminding them they can do that too. Okay, getting closer to the end, I think. Getting closer to this, hopefully, decision part. Much time left? Okay, got a half hour left. Good. This is stuff you're not going to get to business school, or probably maybe not even your leadership class. You might. I hope you do. That's one of the reasons why we write you together, so you can get some of this stuff. Just remember, you're renting your title. I was lucky enough to get the job as CEO of Elevate 6 years ago. It was a new startup. I was the first CEO. But I always remind myself there will be somebody that comes after me. And there was somebody in some other organization, even before we did the merger, that came before me. You really are just renting the title for a little while. So don't get tied up in your identity as a CEO. Don't make it your identity. A lot of people make that mistake. Their identity is their work title. You're just renting it. When you finally leave that job, you're going to be in trouble if you made that your identity. It's not. You have value. I'm going to sound like your grandma now. You have value just because you're here, okay? Like, we care about you just because you're in this world. You don't have to have a title. I try to remember the Stoics at often times like this. What can you control? Your thoughts and actions. You can't control anything else. I don't control whether Bill Evans on city council likes me or whether the mayor is going to fund us. I can only control what I say and what I do. Just remember that. You won't worry as much. And then stay present. Just remember the destination's the journey, not the result. I think I might have told you guys this story last time. If I didn't, I should again. So there was a guy named Kirby Puckett. I'm older than you. There's a guy named Kirby Puckett on the Twins. Kirby eventually did some bad things, and he got known for some inappropriate behavior. But let's not talk about that right now. Let's talk about the fact that when in 1987, he had been trying to get to a World Series for his whole career, and so the Twins finally won the World Series. I think it was 87, if I'm not mistaken. And they put a microphone. Yeah, Twins fan, good. 91, that's true. Yes. So anyway, they put the microphone in Kirby's face at the end. Everybody's got champagne and he's kind of sitting there like, what is Kirby doing? He's not doing everything else that everybody else is doing, celebration. He's kind of he's just sitting there, and they put his microphone in his face, and he's like, they say, hey, aren't you glad at the pinnacle of your career? And just won a World Series. Are you going to go to Disneyland? They put a microphone in his face. And he says something, I was a little kid at the time. And he said something so puzzling. I just kind of always remembered it till now. He said, is that all there is? What he was really saying, it took me a long time to recognize, is like, okay, I had this really long journey. I worked my ass off. I did all these things. I won. That's a moment that won't last very long. So I should have enjoyed the journey, but we always focus on the results, right? I may not get the results. I may not win the World Series. It only lasts for a little time anyway, whether you win or lose, whether you get that promotion or not. But the journey itself actually matters. And so he was regretting the fact that the 10 years or whatever he had been in the league, he wasn't enjoying the journey. He was working so hard to try to enjoy the journey. I'm a big Broncos fan. They're 8-2 right now. But their quarterback, Bo Nix, is struggling. He's like 25 years old. But I was like, listened to an interview the other day, and he's like, the journey is really important to me. Like, I'm struggling, and the fans are pissed off at me, right? But we're 8-2, and I'm learning to enjoy the journey. I'm like, wow, I wish I had that kind of smarts when I was 24 years old. And so you've only got 4. So I should have started this off. How many weeks do you think is in an average life? People will often say 50,000. They'll make some crazy number. It's only 4,000 typically. You want to begin with the end in mind. Don't play it safe. But let me show you what that looks like. This is your life. Some of you are in different places on this little background. You don't have to tell me where you're at. I wish I was here, but I'm not here either. Somewhere in the middle. But if you make it to 90, you've got this many dots. The average life expectancy, let's say it's 72. You're probably up here. Think of where you're at right now and how much more time you've got. It's not a very long time. Each one of those dots you should enjoy. Now, I will probably cry, but let me try not to cry. Okay, we're gonna get decisions in this just real quick. I'm not gonna cry. I tell myself I'm not gonna cry in this. Every time I do this, I'm not going to cry. So I'm going to not cry, okay? Right. So my sons are, I think I told you, I was married for 21 years. I was just recently remarried. I've been married for a year, but I got divorced. And my sons are 27 and 23. I could be off one or 2 years there. So when they were little, they were like 2 or 3 years old. I remember reading books like My Monster Mama and Dr. Seuss. Okay, don't cry. And I remember in the night holding them like, oh God, I gotta get to bed. I got to get up in the morning. I got to get to work. Get this book done. Tristan, my son's name is Tristan. Tristan, you got to go to bed, buddy. You got to go to school. Let's go. Come on, I spent so much time. Damn it. You know where I'm going, right? I spent so much time trying to get to the end. Oops, my props fail me too. I spent so much time to get to here that I didn't think about all the time in the journey. But that's what this is about. What are they going to say about you when you are at the end? What did you do when you were here? One of my favorite bosses of all time. I've never met anybody that didn't say, I love that guy. He cared about me. He cared about where I was going. He stays in touch with me. If that guy died today, there would be 100,000 million billion people. That's not even a number, I don't think, who would go to his funeral and say, man, that guy was an amazing, amazing human being. So yes, we just taught you about management. We just taught you about getting results. But I'm telling you, that stuff doesn't matter. It matters. You got to pay your mortgage. Okay, you got to pay your mortgage. But what you're going to care about at the end is that other stuff. So when we talk about management, yes, we're teaching it to you. But we want to teach you this other stuff too. Now, okay, I cried. I got it over with. Let's talk about decision making, how to make better decisions. Here's a book you should get. It's very dense, so get the audio version, put it on 1.25 speed if you want. Thinking Fast and Slow. It was written by the world's preeminent psychologists, two of them actually, about how to get out of your reptile brain. When do you use fast thinking and slow thinking? So basically you have two kinds of brains, or they're in the same brain, two parts of your brain. The first one was developed a long time ago. It's your reptile brain. It's the impulse brain. It's the one that makes you want to punch somebody because they cut you off in traffic. The more recently developed part of our brains are slow thinking. Okay, maybe I shouldn't punch that guy. Maybe that's not going to be good for me. So this book talks about making better decisions, when to use reptile brain, not very often, when to use your slow part, your slow thinking brain, much more often. But there are times when intuition can serve a goal. So that reptile brain does help you. There's a car coming at you. Am I going to get out of the way? Reptile brain tells me yes. I don't have time to think about it, right? So your reptile brain does serve you. But let's say you're going to go to city council and they're going to cut your funding. This doesn't happen to us, hopefully, but they're going to cut your funding and you want to give it to them. And you're going to get up in front of the whole town and say F-bombs, this and everything else. Maybe you should reconsider that as a strategy. So you want to be in your, he would call it system 2 versus system 1. I would call it slow versus fast. How do we do that? Okay, first, you need to control, like I just cried, right? I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I should have. Maybe it's vulnerable. Maybe you'll go away, man, that Tom's a really vulnerable guy. I don't know. But one thing I could have done ahead of that crying bit was I could have done this box breath. This is what Navy SEALs use before they're in the field or even when they're in the field to control their central nervous system. You can use this too. It's really simple. It's really this easy. You breathe in for a count of 4. 1, I'll just do it for you. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 4. Breathe out for 4. Hold for 4 again, and then do that 4 times. So 4, 4, 4, 4 times. By the time you do it for the 4th time, your central nervous system calms down. So if you have to deliver some hard news to an employee, you have to give a public speech in front of the board or in front of your class, do this. I would say there's 2 things you should remember. First, get to know your people. Second, do this. So there's a second thing I want you to remember. If you can just do this, it's going to make your life so much easier. I did this on the way in. You can't tell because I'm really, excitable, and I talk at that 1.25 speed, but I do this more often than you might even know. So calm yourself down first. That's one way to get yourself out of that intuitive reptile brain. Here's some mental models you could use. So pick one of these. I've got a favorite, but I'll throw a couple at you. One is this hard choice model. It's a matrix because you're doing matrix. So you got the book, it's a matrix. Here's another matrix. If you need to make a hard choice, it's hard to compare to the other options and it's going to have a high impact. Get feedback, mitigate risks, and then execute. If the decision is easy to compare, it's low impact, go with your gut, right? That's reptile brain versus higher thinking brain, slow brain. You'll get these slides, so you don't have to remember this right now if you want to use this model, but here's an easy thing that if you just want in a moment to be able to say, okay, what do I do? Define what kind of problem you have, and then go with this matrix. That's not the one I use though. Here's the one I typically use. Actually, I don't use this as much either. This is the first principles thinking. What do you know to be 100% true? So let's say you have a challenge like, I need to raise $1 million for the Chamber of Commerce. Okay, what do you know to be true? What are the first principles? You might think, well, we have to have membership dues because every other chamber does. Do you? Do you know that to be true? Are there other ways you could raise money? What are things that you know to be true versus things you believe to be true? Break those things down and then reassemble them into a new idea. Elon Musk was famous for building rockets. You probably all know this example. Elon Musk was able to build rockets for, I don't know, like a 68th of the price because he questioned assumptions about what rockets should be made of, said, okay, question, do they have to be made of this? Can they be made of that? And he was able to reassemble a different rocket in a much cheaper, faster way. Now, you can like Elon Musk or not. That's not the point. The point is that he used that methodology to solve problems, and you can too. If you like this stuff, Google this. There's a lot of rabbit holes for first principles. This is the one I use a lot. Bailey would probably tell you I need to use it more. This is a second order decision making. So you're about to make a decision. And again, let's use the one that I used earlier. City council cuts my budget. I want to go yell at them. So I've got a decision to make. Should I go yell or not? That's my first order decision. I decide, yes, I go. So I get up in front of city council, the whole town's watching, and I yell F-bombs. I get upset, I get crazy. And then the next year they cut the funding again. And then maybe some of the board members cut their funding because they saw how I acted on camera. I didn't think through what was going to happen second or third order down. So often what we want to do when we make a decision is going to have a consequence. It's the first order, but you need to think about 5 months from now, 5 days from now, what is the consequence, the unintended consequences of my action? And then maybe rethink about whether I want to do that or not. You can do this with any problem. Should I get married to a stripper? She's hot. That's my first order consequence, right? Okay, let's do it. But I might rethink that if I realize, okay, maybe she came from a broken family. Maybe she's been divorced 5 times. This is probably the worst example I've ever given in a lecture, but you can see where that might not go well for me if we're married another year from now, right? Or not make it gender specific. Some biker guy that has an anger problem. Might seem fun and dangerous at the time. First order consequence, maybe a year from now, not so much. So if you can get yourself, the whole point of this is you can get yourself down to the second, third, fourth, or fifth order consequence. Now you've got a mental model that helps you make a better decision. This is all about making better decisions. One way to do that is to say, okay, I'm about to make a decision. If I go this direction, what's the first, second, third order consequence? If I make that other decision, what is the first order consequence, second and third order consequence of that decision? And then evaluate those 2 trade-offs. Because you'll find there's trade-offs between the first and the third sometimes. The third may get you more net benefit over time than the first. Does that make sense? Okay. I know we're getting close on time. Oh, and then here's that kind of reverse engineering. Or I guess doom, I can't remember what it's called, doom casting, I think. So you're about to make a decision. Instead of thinking all the things that could go right, think about every way it could go wrong. So it's all the stuff under the iceberg. So the ideal is everything above that you think is going to happen, but what are the things that could go wrong? So for us right now, we're about to buy a building in downtown. Okay, board's excited, it's going to create jobs. We're going to have an asset that we can then use for the benefit of the community. Okay, what could go wrong here? Interest rate climate's bad. Right now, there's inflation. The commercial real estate market across the country for commercial real estate in downtowns is really poor. We're not seeing a lot of retail action. Okay, how long am I gonna have to carry that to see what I'm doing? I'm thinking about, well, the things that could go wrong, then try to mitigate those. Because you still want the benefit, but then you're trying to mitigate all the things that are going wrong. So you can use all these mental models. Oh, cool. So again, 2 ways of thinking, fast and slow, reptile, higher order. Slow down your nervous system first if you can, if you have time. Then choose a model. I don't care which model you use. There's lots of models. For me, this one seems easiest for me. So it'll help you make better decisions because as a leader and a manager, you're gonna have to make decisions all the time and every day that affect your people. Okay, I think I'm done. I don't know if I have time left, but I have to answer any questions. I certainly need water for sure.